I'm once again at the point where all of these escorts, I mean, come on, guys. You must have gotten or read the room. You must have understood the situation. Girl is drugged. She's seemingly not wanting to do any of this. And there's this other dude telling everybody what is to happen and what you're getting $800 for that. There is in no way that $1,000 will make all of that right. I do not understand why nobody ever said anything. Hi, I'm Pierre, and welcome to Neon Reactions. Folks, we are back with the Rotten Mango and Stephanie Sue and her coverage of the Diddy Trial. Now, the last time we heard everything about the male escort and what happened there. The cross-examination was very correct. And yes, today we are finally getting Cassie, and I want to hear so badly what she has to say and what's going to happen. Yes, this is exciting, folks. Let us dive right in. Before we do, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like and share the video. Hop on over to my Patreon if you want to support the channel. Check out my podcast with V. We just recorded the 3rd episode this weekend. It was so much fun. Yes, my Discord over is lots of fun too. And if you have anything to tell me, you know, the comment section is the place to go. But now, it's time for Stephanie Sue. Let's see what happens today.
Sometimes there's a lot that happens when the jurors are not in the courtroom, like the fact that there is a fight to decide whether or not Cassie can have her husband in the courtroom being her emotional support. The defense attorney, Anna Esteveo, says, "We understand Ms. Ventura's husband, Alex Fine, may be present in the courtroom, and we expect him to be a potential defense witness, so we would ask that he be excluded." Which makes sense if he's also going to be on the witness stand. He should not be listening to another witness who also happens to be his wife and the mother of his soon-to-be 3 children.
Yes.
That makes sense.
That makes sense.
Prosecutor Emily Johnson states, more or less, "No, that doesn't make sense at all. We were advised of this approximately 10 minutes ago. He's not included on the defense witness list. Ms. Ventura's husband is here with his family to support his wife and testify publicly. We had, under the CVRA, she has the right to be treated with dignity and privacy, and she would like support in this courtroom as she testifies." To which lead defense attorney Tenny Garagos even states, "If I could just elaborate. What we have given the government is a witness list for our case in chief. The reasons are important because at this time, we can't really tell Your Honor who we know we would call. At this time, we can't say who definitely would call, and we certainly," the judge asks, "Wait, why wasn't this raised before this morning when he's here with his entire family inside this courthouse?"
Wait, so he's already in the courthouse and they're debating to kick him out?
Yes, he's in the courthouse waiting to come into the courtroom when Cassie comes in to testify.
Wow.
Cassie's brother is here, so is her cousin. "Your Honor, I apologize. I brought this up to Miss Comey, but not Miss Johnson yesterday. This is my fault. And then I didn't follow up on it last night. I apologize. We're not looking to not have her support people. Her brother is here, who was around all the while in their relationship, and we have our application, Your Honor, is that Ms. Ventura's husband not be in the courtroom under Rule 615. Rule 615 is basically the don't be listening if you're going to talk rule. The rule provides courts with the authority to exclude witnesses from the courtroom to prevent them from hearing other witnesses' testimonies. I mean, the whole point being, it's to prevent witnesses from tailoring their testimony based on what they hear from other witnesses.
That makes sense, yes, but it's already beginning with games that are being played, you know.
So for example, if everybody saw the defendant, this is not about Combs, just like a hypothetical defendant, if they saw him kick a koala, then it would be unfair for the group of people to hear each other testify about how he kicked them, what he said after he kicked the koala, and then they all testify in a row.
Yes, of course.
Another thing that the defense points out is that Cassie's husband at one point did send a threatening message to the defendant, Combs. When Cassie and Combs were in the midst of their breakup, he sent, quote, "several very threatening text messages to our client saying that he would like to beat the F word out of his old just several words that I will not repeat on the record. There are several threatening messages that my client received that we got in discovery from the government. And the reason we didn't put him on our witness list, of course, was because the witness list is for the defense's case in chief. But there are several potential witnesses that, depending on how the government's case comes in, we would have to put on in our case in chief, basically saying, depending on how the government handles this direct examination of Cassie Ventura, they might come in with forcing Alex Fine to testify.
Okay.
The government is so confused. They're arguing, I'm not really sure if at all he would be able to testify about an alleged rape that occurred between Mr. Combs and Miss Ventura. But we're open to having that dialogue, and we would ask that Miss Ventura be allowed to have her support. Her people, including her husband, here in this courtroom. She has various rights under the Crimes Victim Rights Act, and we would ask that he be allowed to be present. And this is happening the morning that Cassie's to testify. So she's in the courthouse, and they're arguing whether or not her husband be allowed in.
Wow.
The defense, they do something interesting, though, because once Rule 16 is invoked, I mean, there's really nothing you can do about it. Once it's invoked, it's mandatory. You can't let him be in the courtroom. However, the defense, they come in swinging. They're like, no, we might call him on the defense witness list. He can't be in the courtroom. And then later they pull back a little bit and they state, we understand she would like her support people. If he wants to come into the courtroom today before we talk about the 2018 time period, we are fine with him remaining in the courtroom until then. We would just ask that he be excluded once we get into that time period. Eventually, it is agreed upon by the parties that Alex Fine, Cassie's husband, will only be removed for that particular part of Cassie's testimony. And it's hard to say what the real reason is on why the defense perhaps did not want Alex Fine in the courtroom.
That's what I was wondering.
It just, I don't know. I mean, who could say, right? It could very much be that they're going to call him up as a witness, or it could also be the fact that from the moment that Alex Fine walks into that courtroom, because I was sitting behind him for most of the testimony days of Cassie, like directly behiund him.
Like you're
literally right in front of him. If I lean my head forward because the pews are kind of smashed together, I would headbutt his back.
Wow.
The whole time when he walked in, he had his head held high, his chest out, and he stared a lot at Sean Combs and all of his family members.
Wow.
And
there's pure hatred in that guy. Understandably.
Let's just say I personally would not want to be on the receiving end of that kind of stare. We would like to thank today's sponsors who have made it possible for Rotten Mango to support the Joyful Heart Foundation. They are working to transform society's response to SADVCA and support survivors healing with resources. This episode's partnerships have also made it possible to support Rotten Mango's growing team and also just us all being in New York and going to court every day. We'd also like to thank you guys for your continued support as we work on our mission to be worthy advocates. As always, full show notes are available at rottenmangopodcast.com.
We're here for you,
A few disclaimers before we get started. Regarding content, there are themes of DV, SA, and sex trafficking. Please watch with caution. This episode's going to be a lot heavier than the recent one, so please take a break if you need to. Many of the quotes and the statements included have been shortened and or moved around and or condensed for brevity and clarity. However, this week's testimony was impossible to shrink into a standalone episode, so this is going to be a two-parter. In the first part, we're going to covering the direct, and then one part covering the cross-examination. And it's going to be questioning of the same defense, but I think there has been a lot of talks about the direct and the cross, and I also feel like there's a lot of things that are not being talked about that were, I thought, key moments. Now, speaking of the legality of things, Sean Combs is presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. This burden of proof is the responsibility of the prosecution, and all the crimes that he has been charged with are alleged until a verdict is reached. Any descriptions or observations regarding Mr. Combs, his legal team, the court, and or the public during the trial were personally noted by myself or my two other researchers who were present in the courtroom. They should not be used as definitive source to determine guilt or innocence or how you feel about someone. I do want to make some clarifications for the last episode. I did see some comments that informed me that the giggling in the courtroom when Sean Combs told a male escort that he was in the import and exporting business is a Seinfeld reference. So that's why people were giggling, and someone comments, total insanity that Diddy was quoting that, but also very on brand. The cross-examinations from the defense team is, someone comments, is giving that he wanted to pull a Legally Blonde, but the witness did not fail to keep his story straight. So there were lots of Seinfeld, there were lots of Legally Blonde references, and also I was absorbed in the comment section of the last video because there's a good amount of people either in law school or attorneys already that were giving me insight on why perhaps Donaldson conducted the cross-examination the way that he did. And I thought some of them were correct.
Very interesting. Wow.
So if you guys are interested and like need some closure on that, go check out the comments in the last video. But with that being said, Judge Arun is seated on the bench. He's at the very front of the courtroom. I have a courtroom sketch for you guys.
Oh, we finally see the courtroom. Okay. Large video monitor. That was Diddy. The defense, the prosecutors. Okay. Okay, and Stephanie said she was further in the back, probably somewhere around here, the last 3 rows or something like that, I guess. Okay.
Okay, so I am on the third to last pew on the back right side. Alex Fine, Cassie's brother, Cassie's cousin, as well as Cassie's legal attorney and like 2 of his fellow attorneys are also in the row in front of us. And then in front of them are government attorneys. So there's prosecutors that are not working the case.
So all of Cassie's attorney, the whole team is right in front of you. Right. You're looking at them.
Yes, and every time Cassie takes a break or if we have a recess or if there's lunch, they will walk out with Cassie. And then they'll walk back in with Cassie, and they're literally right in front of me. Yeah. So the Judge Arun is asking, is the government ready to call their next witness? Yes, Your Honor. The government calls Cassandra Ventura. This is the first time since 2018 that Cassie and Sean Combs are seeing each other face to face. Out of one of the double doors from behind where we're sitting, the door opens and in walks Cassie.
Wow. Okay, them not having seen each other for such a long time and her walking down that aisle, kudos to that woman. Wow.
She's wearing the long brown dress that you've probably seen pictures of her in already. And there is so much tension in that moment. The main thing that I oddly recall in what I wrote down is the noise. Yes, I'm like visually seeing everything and I'm visually like trying to analyze everybody's faces. But for some reason, the only thing that stands out in my recollection of that moment and my memory is that I could be... It's the noise, like the sound of the door opening and the sound of her walking on the carpet because I felt like it was that quiet.
Wow.
It was just so intense. She does not look at anyone when she walks in. She keeps her eyes glued to the front, but it's not like she's holding her chin down. She's not looking down. Her shoulders are back. Her stomach is like 2 watermelons. I mean, she's heavily pregnant. I don't even know how she's walking and not waddling.
She's like, what, 8.5 months?
Yeah. Additionally, when she sits at the witness stand, she has to lean in at times to speak into the microphone, which I'm sure just cannot be comfortable. She walks in, sits at the witness stand, and Combs, from my perception, is statuesque. And maybe it's in my head, but he feels more frozen than normal. And it doesn't even feel intentional. Because I think previously it felt like, it seems like he's trying to not give reactions. He's trying to be as still as possible, but this feels very naturally still. And when she walks in, like the whole time that she's walking down the aisle past us, like everybody's body is pivoting towards Cassie as she's walking. So our whole bodies are moving with her. Same as Sean Combs. He's watching her walk down the entire length of the courtroom. She does not look at him. And she sits down And I obviously listened to a ton of interviews of Cassie when I was doing like my 8-hour Diddy arrest series last year. Her voice was raspier when she was younger. Perhaps it was her environment.
I know, like, there's a recipe of restraint that I keep when I do a record.
Her voice is actually really soft, which I know some people are gonna be like, oh my God, she's faking it. But it didn't feel like that. She didn't sound like she was trying to sound meek and like so soft. It just sounded like she was very calm initially. Nervous, but calm. And I wrote down in my notes, because I heard, which we're not supposed to be talking in the courtroom. We're not supposed to be responding to evidence. We're not supposed to be having any sort of conversations. But I do hear someone whisper behind me, she's so beautiful. Prosecutor Johnson, who does the opening statement, she takes the podium right next to the jurors. She's blonde, it's a bob, I love it, she looks good. She looks at Cassie, and I will say the two of them, I'm sure they've seen each other countless times by this point, and again, maybe I'm overthinking things, but I thought maybe this is why Johnson did the opening statement, because when I was doing that recap episode for you guys, I like shortened and condensed that opening statement and like pulled the parts that I felt were the most emotional, but in the courtroom, I think it was like an hour long of an opening statement. Whoa. And the cadence was a lot slower. So there were a lot of people that were in the courtroom that were slightly confused on why she was the one that did the opening statement. But that day, I'm like, okay, maybe this is why. Because the way I interpreted it, Cassie is looking at Prosecutor Johnson and she looks very safe looking at her. She's not really looking at many other people. She's either looking at Prosecutor Johnson or her family, who is right behind Prosecutor.
Very, very good. Also a good strategy. As long as Cassie feels good and safe, just as to use the word that Stephanie used, that is a good thing. That's why, my God, Cassie seems to be so focused. That's amazing.
Prosecutor Johnson sitting in the pews, and then I'm like right behind them. So, I mean, not that she's looking at me, but you get it. Like, I'm just giving you an idea of where we are. And she just stares at Prosecutor Johnson, and she looks like she's more at ease when she's looking at her. So she keeps leaning in to talk into the microphone, very pregnant. At a sidebar, lead prosecutor Comey even brings up to the judge, this witness is very, very pregnant. We are afraid she could have the baby over the weekend. We want her off the stand before the weekend. So it's that big of an issue. At times, Cassie's kind of supporting her belly. She doesn't really try to draw attention to the fact that she's pregnant. She's not like rubbing her belly, trying to gain sympathy. Not that I think that's a thing that someone would do, but she just seems uncomfortable. She's like trying to move, put her hands under her belly to maybe support it up, or put her hands on her hips. There's a box of tissues next to her.
And how many hours you said she was sitting there in that position?
I mean, it's like
hours at a time.
So
right?
it's the jurors come in. Judge Arun really tries to do 9:30 to 5. It's like a 30-minute lunch and then maybe a handful of 10-minute breaks, like maybe 3 10-minute breaks.
And she's sitting on this wooden bench for majority of the day.
Well, I think it has some cushions, that one.
Oh, okay.
But still very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Very uncomfortable and very cold. Everyone in the courtroom is cold, and she looked cold as well. And it's just so silent. You can hear the sketch artist just like furiously drawing on their little posters. Through Cassie, the jury learns that she is 38 years old now. She was in an on and off relationship with Combs for a little over 11 years. She ends up signing to his label, Bad Boy Records, which notably, if you remember Notorious Big, Biggie was signed with Bad Boy Records before his murder. We're gonna get there. Cassie states that she signed a 10-album deal with Bad Boy Records. She releases one album in 2006 and then never releases another album again. Furthermore, Cassie states that she was in a platonic friendship with Combs when she signed him, and it wasn't until her 21st birthday that things start getting intimate. Side note, they are 17 years apart regardless. She says they go to Vegas to celebrate her 21st birthday, and that's when she's explaining, he kissed me in the bathroom of his actual suite pretty early in the morning. We had been up, all of us, pretty late. And that's kind of how she is for majority of her testimony. She looks very genuine in her thought, is the perception that I had. And obviously, I think I went in with biases, but she just, when she's asked a question, she looks like she's getting into that moment. She's like lost in that moment. It does.
I mean, come on. After seeing that hotel video, isn't everybody who watched that biased in some way? I mean, if you're not biased after that video, then there's something wrong with you.
It doesn't seem like she's stuttering of like, oh, I don't know, actually. It just seems like she's in that moment and just trying to say, yeah, that's what happened, basically.
Wow.
That was kind of her energy throughout. She says that she was really confused whilst Combs is just like scribbling down notes. So there's like a few different modes that Sean Combs took during Cassie's testimony. He's either very stoic, very statuesque, or there are moments where it feels like he's intensely staring at her. He could be staring at the evidence screen intensely, he could be staring at the judge intensely, but it did feel like he was staring at her intensely at certain points. Or he's like just scribbling notes. Because, I mean, they're preparing for their cross-examination. So everything she says right now is very important for the defense team.
Yes,
and I thought it
yes.
was very interesting because Mark Agnifilo, the lead attorney, he's taken a lot of notes. But Sean Combs is taking a lot of notes. And I thought about it and I was like, you know, that makes sense because he doesn't strike me as the type of person that will let the lawyers just do their jobs. He strikes me as the type of person that is trying to be an equal part of the team, that is giving his input, that's giving his advice on
He wants to be in control somehow, as with every part of his life.
the strategies. And Mark Agnifilo, he's also two modes throughout all of this. He's either like furiously writing on his legal pad, or he's like leaned back in his chair like he's watching a movie. Like it's two modes. It's either like just passively viewing or just furiously taking notes. I think I was just really confused at the time. Again, young new artist, like just really didn't know the lay of the land when it came to things like that. So in my confusion, I just kind of cried and ran out. So she said that they kissed in the bathroom, she cries, and she runs out because she's not used to any of this before. She doesn't even understand it. This is the executive, the owner of Bad Boy Records, the label that she's just signed with. She says, yeah, I mean, I was pretty naive, I would say. I think the part that made it a little more confusing, maybe, to add some context, is that Combs was in a public relationship with Kim Porter at the time, and Cassie was publicly dating a producer named Leslie. Cassie says she did not want to kiss Combs, not in that moment. But eventually they come back to New York and they start hanging out more. He was getting his apartment renovated, so she would meet him up at the hotel that he was staying at, which was, interestingly enough, the Trump Hotel in New York City, which there's always been conversations happening about the connection between Diddy and Trump. But Cassie says, even the first time she was invited to the Trump Hotel, she describes the feeling as, I mean, initially a bit nervous, and then just like being a young artist, excitement, of course, and okay, we're gonna talk about music or we're gonna talk about what's next. I think it's a lot of, in that time period that's just kind of hazy because it was a while ago, but just nervous and excitement. A while later, she elaborates on the hotel visits, and this is while, all the while, Combs, Agnifilo, scribbling in their notepads. I think it was nervous excitement. It also just made me feel sneaky. I didn't know. I was curious, but of course I ended up here and wanted to be like around him. So that was just kind of it. I was like, okay, I'm here. Leaving, it was just always confusing because I really didn't know what I felt. I felt like I didn't know what I knew, that I was making decisions for myself or not. I feel like I was just like, here I am. I don't know how to explain that. But through the hotel meetups of them just talking about these projects,
I mean, she was 21. She was in the beginning of her career. She just signed a deal over 10 albums with a well-known producer. Good God. She was nervous, and yes, understandable.
They start developing a lot more comfortable relationship with each other. And then, quote, I remember being introduced to the idea of oral sex. It wasn't something that I really understood or did at that point, and he basically taught me how. So that's when the relationship starts turning intimate. Cassie says she becomes one of his girlfriends. And at the time, she didn't even know. It wasn't really confirmed per se, but they were always spending intimate time together, so she assumed that they're boyfriend and girlfriend, yes. But they never went public about it because, quote, it was always just a discussion of me being his artist and not wanting it to look bad. But I also know it was because of his family and his children and other things that were personal for him. He's also publicly linked with Kim Porter around this time. Kim Porter being one of the mothers of his children to 3 of his 7 children. Well, actually, technically 4 because of Quincy.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
so that's interesting because Quincy is Kim Porter and Albie Shore's son that Diddy claims he's adopted. Albie Shore denies that he's not been adopted by Diddy. And then Christian King Combs, and then you've got the twins. So technically 4 of the 7. And they start showing pictures of Cassie and Sean just to establish their relationship. Miss Ventura, directing your attention to the screen in front of you, do you recognize who's depicted in that still image? Yes, that's me and Sean. They're establishing the relationship, and these are pictures that you can Google from them on red carpets. Like, there are some more private photos, but nothing alarming, nothing salacious, nothing mind-blowing, just pictures of them hanging out with friends. And this is when I noticed something very interesting. And I thought, okay, maybe I'm thinking too deep into it. My researcher right next to me is like, no, you're not, because she took the exact same notes, and we're not looking at each other's notes in the courtroom. We're not talking, we're not allowed to, right?
What did
but
you
when
see?
we came out, it was interesting. So when there were pictures of just Cassie on the exhibit screen, which is to the right of Alex Fine. So we all kind of, Cassie is directly in front of Alex Fine. And then Diddy, you kind of have to pivot a little to the left, or your eyes can pivot, but you know, your head can pivot. And then you can pivot to the right and you see this TV that shows the exhibits. When there were pictures of just Cassie and maybe like Cassie and a girlfriend of hers, it seems like he would look at the screen. He would look at the exhibit. When it was a picture of Cassie and Sean Combs on the screen, I did not see him pivot any of the times. He's just
Okay.
looking straight at his wife. He will not look at those pictures. And those pictures are not salacious. They're like red carpet pictures, right? He won't look at them. But then, when there's pictures of abuse, he will look at them. And not only did we notice and perceive that he looks at the evidence of the pictures that show the abuse, like bruising.
He looks at
will
Diddy
look at
after
it,
that.
and then we saw him look and glare at Combs, the
Yes, of course.
defendant, and the family. Yeah.
Wow.
So it's like when it was Cassie, he would look, and then he would look back at his wife. When it's Cassie and Diddy, he's just eyes fixated on his wife on the stand. And then when it's the abuse, he will look, and then he won't look at his wife. He will stare down the defendant
Okay.
and the family members. And this is
Okay,
like
very
multiple days
interesting.
too. And what's crazy is they're looking back.
Oh, really? They're making strong eye contact?
At one point, and like at the risk of sounding super dramatic, Janice Combs is a very intense woman. She's very tiny. She's a short little lady,
That's
okay?
Sean Combs' mom.
Yes, this is Sean Combs' mom. She comes in like a lot of people. I did overhear hallway talk of her choice of wigs. You know, she'll come in, big old sunglasses, like just kind of interesting outfits. And she's a tiny, tiny little lady, but she is terrifying in my opinion. There's something about her that is so terrifying. So there's this moment where Janice Combs, Sean Combs'
Okay.
mom, I thought she was side-eyeing me. Not that I am anybody, but like just because I look over there, she's 2 rows ahead of us, but on the left side. So diagonally 2 rows. But for Alex Fine, she's only 1 row ahead, right?
Yeah.
And I see her and she's like, her head is still towards the front of the courtroom, but her eyes are peeking over her sunglasses, and it is the most intense side eye I've ever seen from anybody. And I
Okay.
was thinking, what did I do? Like, did I accidentally bump into her at the restroom? She was not looking at me. She was looking at Alex Fine. And she held that glare for, oh my God, it was the longest glare ever.
Really? Was it Alex aware of that glare, or?
I don't think so. But it was a really long
Wow.
glare.
I mean, those are little battles that are being fought silently. That's crazy.
Just so intense. And with that, there are a lot of things that have gone viral now with the direct questioning or the direct examination by Prosecutor Johnson. So she's standing at the podium. Ms. Ventura, do you recognize who is depicted in Government Exhibit 2A501? Yes? Who is it? Scott Mescudi or Kid Cudi, as people know him? We dated in 2011. We worked together for a brief period. Cassie says that when they were dating in 2011, she did not tell Sean Combs, but he did find out. How did he find out? He actually found out during a freak off in LA. He went through my phone, and I believe he saw emails between me and one of Scott's staff members. It was about bringing my toiletry bag to my house or something like that the next day. What was his reaction after he saw those emails? I just remember him putting like a wine bottle opener between his fingers and like lunging at me. His eyes were blacked out, super angry, and I just had to get out of there. It was actually another time that I was able to get out of a freak off. She runs away to another hotel, gets her burner phone. So she's got a burner phone so that she can call Scott. Eventually, he picks her up. Wow. She's saying, this whole situation is not going to be resolved if I just keep running away. She's like, I gotta go and just explain to Sean what's going on. Like, we were on a break. Maybe we're moving on. Maybe we're all moving on, you know? And it's not like he's not seeing other people. She says, when I arrived at his house, that was the house where his bedroom was on like the top floor. It's this massive mansion in LA. So I went into his room and he was irate. He was just so angry. And when I was in the room, he told me about the videos that he had, that he was going to release of me and how he was going to hurt Scott and I. So that was all said there. And then I just ultimately left. When I was leaving, I was more than ready to go. Sean, kicked me in the back on my way out. So I just had a big bruise on my back. I fell to the floor and then left. I had a large bruise on my back. The day is fuzzy, but I had bruises in other places on my body. I just remember that one significantly because he literally kicked me with the bottom of his foot in my back. When she goes back to the hotel room, it is trashed. She doesn't know, but it seems like allegedly that one of Sean Combs's guards, maybe himself, maybe one of his accomplices, I don't know, trashed the hotel room. She says it was just torn up. There was somebody peed all over the floor in the bathroom. My clothes were everywhere. All the furniture was turned upside down. Somebody pooped in the toilet and didn't flush it. It was just gross. So she gets another hotel room with Scott, and that's when she sends an email to her mom and Scott just in case as a record. It reads, threats. The threats that have been made towards me by Sean Puffy Combs are that he is going to release 2 explicit sex tapes of me. One on Christmas Day, maybe before or right after, and another one sometime soon after that. He has also said that he will be having someone hurt me and Scott Mescudi physically. He made a point that it wouldn't be by his hands. He actually said he'd be out of the country when it happened.
Wow.
Soon after that, Cassie flies home to Connecticut to be with her mom, and within hours, her mom is taking pictures of her giant bruises on her back because she's like, no, something's not right. You abruptly fly to Connecticut, and now, like, what happened? I'm sure her mom has like a sixth sense. This is her daughter. Cassie tells her mom that, no, this is the first time that Sean Combs has ever been abusive. She says, I just wasn't ready. And I was also just terrified. Because
the crazy thing is that that guy is still out and about, you know. I mean, not now anymore, but that he was out for so long. And nobody really said something, did something. That is crazy.
The prosecutor is asking, why didn't you just tell her the truth? Like, that this has been going on for so long. Like, it's not normal. What's not normal? Just constantly being bruised up by the person that you love or that says they love you. Like, you can't justify it to anyone, just especially not your mom. At that point, Cassie requests that Scott and her break up. At this point in the testimony, Cassie requests a break. And so she walks out abruptly. Her husband is also following her out. Now, I will say that Alex Fine the whole time, he doesn't look happy, especially when he's looking in the general direction of where the defendant and the defendant's family are sitting. I would not even say that he looks stoic or neutral. He looks kind of pissed. But when he's walking out after Cassie requests a break, he looked like he was like ready to burn the world down for her.
Really?
Yeah, he looked very upset, but in like a protective way. It didn't just look like he's like, I'm so angry, you know? He seemed very upset. Like, I think he's upset at the fact that his wife is going through this. After that break, Cassie comes back to tell the court that in Connecticut, because Kid Cudi had come to Connecticut with her, she just wanted to break it up with him. She said it was too much danger, too much uncertainty of what could happen if they kept seeing each other. When you say danger, what specific danger were you worried about? I mean, Sean said to me before I left LA that he was going to hurt the both of us. And I at least took that in my mind, like, if I stay in this situation, we both will be hurt. If I don't, no one will be. He mentioned that when we were out of the country, that Scott's car would be blown up. He wanted his friends to be there to see it. When you say he wanted his friends to be there to see it, who is he? Sean wanted Scott's friends to be there to see the car get blown up in the driveway. But after that incident, Cassie Combs and Kid Cudi do end up meeting up with each other, and this is like information that I have not come across until the testimony, at Soho House in LA. The purpose of the meeting was to discuss the relationship that we were no longer in. Yeah, and the only thing I remember from the end was Scott asking Sean. Scott said, "What about my vehicle?" And Sean said, "What vehicle?" And that was the end of the meeting.
Wait, they met up and talked about, we don't know.
Yeah.
At all.
Just that they're no longer seeing each other.
Okay.
And that was the part with Kid Cudi that everyone has been talking about. And I think the internet has been speculating that potentially he could be called to testify. Kim Porter was brought up a lot. And I think it was interesting for her to be brought up in the presence of also her children. Now, a picture from the 2006 BET Awards pops up on the exhibit screen. And it's Kim Porter, Combs, Cassie, and a woman named Sherry Dennis. They're all on the red carpet. Who is Kim Porter? Kim Porter was Sean's ex from Before Me and the mother of his children. So far, Kid Cudi, Kim Porter have come up, but there hasn't been much discussion that we didn't already know from like a few months ago about the two of them. But also, the infamous Suge Knight comes up. If you need some context, it's like, I genuinely think Sean Combs lived 10 different lives. Suge Knight is like from 5, 6, 7 lives ago. Cassie says, Combs and Suge Knight's, yeah, we're rivals. Which is very valid. Combs had Bad Boy records from New York. Suge Knight had Death Row records for LA. They had Notorious Big, Sean did. And then Suge Knight had Tupac. And so they got the infamous East Coast, West Coast hip-hop rivalry, which semi-results in Tupac and Biggie Smalls' death, their murders. There's actually quite a bit to unpack with Suge Knight. And this is how Cassie describes the incident at the Melrose Diner, where Suge Knight is shot. And there's speculations that Sean Combs had something to do with it. Cassie says,
there are speculations that he has something to do with seemingly every celebrity shooting there is. This is just too nuts.
Sean and I were having a freak off at one of his homes in LA, and I just remember we were kind of like just chilling at this point, and D-Rock, one of the security guards, came in and he said that Suge was down at Mel's Diner, which was just right down the hill, and they quickly packed up and drove down there. What was your reaction? I was crying. I was screaming, like, please don't do anything stupid. I was just really nervous for them. I didn't know what it meant, what they were going to do. I saw them get dressed and leave the house. And you mentioned that they returned. Is that correct? Yes. Approximately how long between when they left did they return? It really wasn't that long. I couldn't imagine. It was probably like definitely less than an hour, 30 minutes, 45 minutes tops. When they get back, the prosecutors, they now want to focus on the guns. Have you ever handled Sean's guns? Handled? I've been handed, yeah, but scared. Who handed a gun to you? I don't know specifically who, but it was some security guard in the car. Approximately when did this happen? And what do you recall about that night? I just remember we took mushrooms and I was like really high and I was handed the gun to just hold in my bag. But I was just freaking out the whole time that it was gonna go off. I hadn't used or learned to operate a gun at that point, so.
Wait, is this like kind of like the J-Lo situation?
Yes, so this might be important later because if you guys
exactly the same.
remember, there was an incident a while back, and this is when Sean Combs, Diddy, was reportedly dating Jennifer Lopez. There was a nightclub shooting, and it is alleged that J-Lo had a gun in her purse as they left the nightclub. This is what we said about it months ago. As they're dating, both of them get arrested in New York City for a shooting that happens at a club. Diddy had been at this club with J-Lo, Shine, which is like a musical artist that he had just signed, I believe, and his bodyguard, Anthony Wolf Jones. The four of them were at a club when an argument breaks out, and somehow that escalates to shots being fired. Ultimately, 3 people get shot. There are witnesses from the club that are certain that they saw Diddy holding a gun in his hand. Diddy's protege, Shine, was also holding a gun. And according to a witness, that's what the witness remembers, but they fell to the ground because they had been shot in the shoulder.
And Shine took the whole weight of it all and was in prison.
Another bystander, she had nothing to do with the initial fight. She doesn't even know these people. Her name is Natanya Rubin. She was shot in the face by Diddy, she claims. Shine, the 18-year-old musician, gets arrested at the club. Diddy and J-Lo had already left by the time that cops come. They ran straight to the car. Side note, some allege that Diddy zipped out of there, leaving his girlfriend behind. But either way,
They both end up in the car being chased by NYPD. I think they run like 11 traffic lights before they're finally pulled over. And inside the car, some sources allege inside J-Lo's purse was the gun because Diddy would make her. Anyway, long story short, there's a lot of allegations that Diddy was the shooter. They all get arrested. J-Lo's charges are dropped. Now it's just Diddy, his bodyguard, and his musical protege, Shine.
But Cassie states she had that gun in her bag. It was in my bag for the duration of the club visit, so like about an hour and a half. And how did you feel while the gun was in your bag? Just terrified? I didn't want anyone to touch me, come near me. I just stayed like sitting in the back. After you left the club, what did you do with the gun? As soon as we got in the car, I gave it to whoever the security was. I just didn't want it. I had no idea why I had it in the first place, and I just wanted to not be holding a loaded gun if I was. Speaking of guns, Cassie testifies that there are a lot of guns inside the Combs homes. Firstly, he has a lot of homes. Secondly, he reportedly has a lot of guns in those homes. Cassie...
It's very understandable that she doesn't want to be around guns. I mean, yeah. Not a fun thing to be around.
She says she personally saw guns in his New York, LA, Miami, and Jersey residences, just like laid out on the table by security, handguns. She says, yeah, maybe there was no point in those guns being laid out on the tables. She said it felt psychological. She says it's a vague memory. Just they came out here and there and guns were taken out here and there. So like, I always felt like it was just a bit of a scare tactic. I didn't really know for what purpose. However, Suge Knight is now in prison, and he has always been suspicious of Sean Combs, and he still does jailhouse interviews saying that he's suspicious of Sean Combs. But since we're on Suge Knight, we also have to talk about Notorious Big real quick. Cassie mentions that there are aliases that the two of them would use to book hotel rooms for these freak-offs. Cassie went by Jackie Starr, Veronica Bang, and Anita Crawford. Combs went by Frank Black or Frank White. She's asked... Turning to Jackie Starr, why did you use the name Jackie Starr? That was a name that, I don't know who came up with it. If it was him or me, that I just used to actually book dancers. So I would use that name instead of my own name, and then just started using it as a hotel room name. But she never mentions why Combs was named Frank Black or Frank White. But if you look online, Biggie Smalls would often refer to himself as Frank White. He got the name from a movie character who, quote, goes from ashy to classy, and he would sometimes be called Black Frank White, because it's just a big part of his lore. So if you're not familiar with the Biggie lore, I will link that episode below, or just wait, because there have been whispers that the conversation is going to arise again. Biggie has since obviously passed, but there's whispers that it's going to be a bigger conversation later on. Prince is also brought up. Cassie is explaining that one day she was with her makeup artist, Myla Morales, at the Beverly Hills Hotel. And one of the friends, she's just there with a group of girlfriends.
There's another thing about Prince. I really liked Prince a lot back in the day. And he was not known to be the drug user. You know, he was just not known for it. And then he died on an overdose. What? That was the whole Prince passing deal was very strange and weird. That was weird.
One of the friends is like, do you know that Prince is having a party at his house? He's going to perform. I mean, we gotta go. It's like a once-in-a-lifetime experience to see Prince at a private performance. So Cassie shows up. She says, we arrived and went downstairs. There weren't that many people there, and Prince wasn't performing yet. So we were just there, and I saw some executives from, like, BET. I saw different people that I knew through Sean, and then suddenly I heard that he was there.
Prince or Sean?
Sean. Huh. She did not tell him. Because, I mean, it's not like she thought that if she told him, he was going to say no. It's not that he asked and she lied. She just was with her girlfriends. And then the night ended up at Prince's house at a party where there's a bunch of other people. Cassie says that she immediately books it out of there, though. Just like runs as fast as she can for the hills into the front yard because she could tell that he was angry. She says he came after her, quote, It's a little fuzzy, but the most distinct memory I have is like running and falling into the bushes in the front yard. And like, I don't know if at that point he was over me. I have no idea. I just remember falling in the bushes and then getting up quickly, getting into the car and getting back to the hotel. He follows her to the hotel where the makeup artist, Mila, is asleep on the couch. So he bursts in through the room. She's like, please, can we just like fight in the bedroom? And she says, we had this bad fight. He beat me up in that room. He was throwing luggage at me, just calling me all kinds of names.
Is he just very jealous, controlling?
Yeah. Now, there are allegations that before the trial, that Prince's name might come up during the trial. It could be referring to this. It could be referring to further allegations that Prince and Combs would party together. People thought it was strange, but most people seem to agree that the relationship between Combs and Prince was more professional, distant than close friendship. Now, side note, more celebrity names will come up during the cross-examination of Cassie, which will be covered in the next one. But the most important name that I think that came up during the direct, I will say, when some of these big names came up, the jurors seemed a lot more attentive, a lot more awake. Like the minute that Kid Cudi came up, they're like jotting notes. Like these names are, I mean, a lot of people know these names, especially Kid Cudi for some reason. Now, there is this moment, though, where the government requests back-to-back exhibits to be shown to the witness, to Cassie, but also to the open court. And all of them are pictures of male escorts, which, side note, Alex Fine does not appear to be looking at the pictures of the male escorts. And I don't think it's because he's upset and, like, shocked at his wife having gone through this. Like, some people are trying to make it seem like, she had so many partners, he's so disgusted. It just looks like they are at a different stage in their lives now. They have to come and testify, but they have a family, and he's just choosing not to look at the photos. Like, that's how I perceived it.
Yep.
Now, she's responding to the...
He doesn't have any beef with those guys. He's got beef with somebody completely different.
Ones that she recognizes. She's like, this one is Islander. He was hired for freak-offs, and I think he was on the site Latin Men. Next exhibit. I knew this one as... I knew him as Tommy. Next exhibit, I don't really recall his name. Next exhibit, I knew him as Skylar. And this is Jake, this is Greg. And then another photo pops up, and the jurors have zero reaction. But the press, there's shuffling in the press. People are like writing in the press, like you just hear pens on journals. Miss Ventura, who do you know the individual depicted in Government Exhibit 2A624 to be? Jonathan? It's Jonathan Odie. Do you remember him? This is what we said about him a few months ago.
The crazy guy who ran shooting. Wow.
The floors of the Trump National Doral Miami Hotel are impeccably clean, evidenced by footage of a man dressed in black inside the hotel that gets released. He's in this nearly empty area of the hotel, and he's pointing his gun behind him. And his wrist seems to be made out of jello while he's just shooting up in the air at the ground. He's sometimes shooting at the chandelier, sometimes at the ground itself. And the footage is interesting. He's just recklessly shooting his gun. He's slipping on the freshly cleaned floors multiple times. He's wearing just socks on tiled floors. Then he gets up and then shoots around like his wrist is made out of jello and then starts running trips again. Honestly, if you told me this is movie footage of a man who is shooting at ghosts, I would potentially believe you.
Yeah,
but it's not. Yes. It's real footage. It's real footage of a man screaming, "Come out, mother!" while shooting at the ceiling and in the lounge areas. This man also grabs an American flag to drape over the front desk of the hotel. This is during Trump's presidency. He goes behind the counter, starts breaking, smashing the computers. When the Miami-Dade police arrive, a shootout ensues, both sides are firing, and in the commotion, the gunman manages to flee.
To escape,
he is found later hiding near the elevators with gunshot wounds to his legs. 1 gunshot to the right ankle, 2 to the left leg. Interestingly enough, most of the shots fired by the man were into the floor and ceiling, and ultimately the only one shot, thankfully, was himself. The man, Jonathan Odie, is arrested. He's a speaker for a website called dancingbears.com. It's an X-rated website where male dancers put on big bear masks and have intimate relations with women. But he continues rambling about, quote, Obama is Osama. Trump makes his money on gas. Kill all the police in the street. Useless, good for nothing, nada. All of you. Laws are corrupt. Police death has come to you. You be judged. Die for now and for hell and for all of eternity. People in the streets are going to shoot you.
He's on a really bad trip, on a very long bad trip.
Get heart attacks. You're all dead. I'm going to let them know to put a bullet in your head. My dog Bubbles, you got to let him out of the apartment, Bubbles. If he does not eat, he will die. He then proceeds to pass the officers his house and car keys. Don't hurt my dog Bubbles.
You don't have...
Time in the United States?
Yeah.
Just my dog Bubbles.
He continues on his rambles. I have a settlement. I have a settlement with the former president of the United States, Obama. I have a settlement with the current president of the United States, Donald Trump. And I have one with P. Diddy. Excuse me?
Obama, Trump, P. Diddy. The lineup is interesting.
After the hospital, Jonathan Odie is brought into an interrogation room. Here's what I want you guys to know. Diddy and Ross, which they're good buddies, okay? And they're gay.
Ross?
Rick Ross. The police are confused. Who is?
Diddy and Ross and Khaled. They're all gay. Okay?
DJ Khaled, Rick Ross, and P. Diddy?
Yeah.
They're all gay?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
You know the Illuminati group that I was telling you about? He puts his hands up in a triangle shape. The Illuminated group, you know, the Illuminati, which is an elite group, okay? Individuals which run the whole country, all right? What I did this for was to basically transmit a statement to the American people because they want the United States to fall. They've been creating chaos and confusion in the United States. They want the United States to fall. You have the Illuminati, basically, which means illuminate.
It was all very, very crazy what that guy was talking. But in the end, you never know what parts you should believe or not, you know.
They do satanic ritual abuse, which is basically CIA mind programming techniques to their own family and kids, and they bond that way. They do animal abuse, killing of animals, blood sacrifices, and everything in the Bohemian Grove. You know, where the bushes go.
Okay, how do I know this?
Yeah, that's what I want to know. How do you know
Yes,
this?
yeah.
Puff Daddy?
Yeah.
P. Diddy, whatever you call himself these days. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, he's part of what's called the Boule. The Boule is a branch of the Illuminati.
Okay.
It's the black people. Okay? I'm from Africa, so I'm not a racist.
Okay.
You my brother, so I like black people.
Okay.
My mom, I was raised by an African woman in my house. Okay.
And the police are like, okay, right, okay. So I have this settlement with Sean, and he belongs to that agenda. That's why he's so famous. They land over contracts. Okay. He leans in, he puts his arms on the table.
I had sex with Cassie and Sean. Basically, he would tell me what to do with Cassie. I had like 15 encounters, and I heard a lot.
Because when they would do it, Sean talks a lot on the phone and on the TV with speakers and stuff, and I'll be in there. I was like a slave. Yeah, for them. That's what I was. He leans back. So I caught herpes. He goes on.
What is going on?
Yeah, I mean, it just...
We saw that episode. That was crazy.
It was like the ramblings of someone who is a little unhinged. He leans back and he goes on to explain that Diddy's 2 attorneys asked him to turn in a video recording. Those 2 attorneys are also involved in Michael Jackson's death and the Illuminati. It's unclear, but it seems like he's stating a video was recorded of this supposed encounter and he turns it in, but he also states, they gave it back to me accidentally, and it's possible that I threw everything out, but it's also possible that I could produce a copy. I'm not sure. Now, how does that lead up to him going into the Trump hotel with a gun?
My settlement put me in a box. Basically, I couldn't talk because I was going to be sued. So I let it be, but they've been following me, and they've had, Smart Ghetto has had the FBI on me, has had other agencies looking at me and spying on me, okay, because they want to set me up as an extortionist. Like if I was extorting Sean for money. It's wrong.
Basically what happened is the Ciroc agenda, you know, the Ciroc vodka agenda is to promote binge drinking and drugs. The hip hop agenda, that's why they had Tupac killed. Because when they killed him, they gained pain. That's when the record sales go up. That's how you become famous. That's how you do it, all right? Tupac is still alive. He's in Cuba. Basically what happens,
Yes.
it was in the hip-hop agenda.
What?
He alleges, in more simplified terms, they move drugs all over the United States. They move drugs in private jets that don't get screened within the United States domestically. They move all that dope in the private jets. They move what's called high-grade powder MDMA. They move cocaine. They move liquid cocaine in their bottles, too.
I seen liquid cocaine. I've drank it myself. Having sex with Diddy and Cassie. Okay, it's not good. He drinks it all the time.
It's not good.
That's liquid cocaine.
All right.
Many state it sounds like an interrogation that one would watch to study for psychology class. And to be frank, there's many parts of the interrogation that sounds like the unhinged ramblings of someone who has lost touch with reality and has gotten swept up in every internet conspiracy possible. Perhaps he created a whole fantasy of two high-profile A-list celebrities, and in his mind, he truly knows them. He's met them. He's had these encounters with them, but it's all a fantasy, right?
Yep.
It doesn't change the fact that he committed this crazy crime, and it does appear that most of what he's saying are full-blown conspiracies, we hope. But the question is, what if there's even a little bit of truth to what he's saying? And now Cassie has just confirmed that they know each other. He recently did an interview with News Nation from a Miami jail, by the way. He says, I felt bad because I got along well with Cassie. I think she's a decent person, and unfortunately, I had a suspicion that she was in a situation that, but I wasn't sure. And now understand what was going on in her life and what was happening.
Wow.
Meeting her up at the hotel shows me the type of individual he is.
And confirms that everything that happened to me was true and correct. He was saying PI were following him. He was scared for his life. He says all this starts because he was making more money to perform sexual acts. He says, I got dressed like a police officer. Do you recall Witness 2?
Yeah.
I got dressed like a police officer, and they stripped me down, and then they offered me some money. They offered me some money to do some extra sexual stuff. He describes everything pretty distinctly. He says, the freak-offs, candles, he would just sit in the corner sofa, watch, and he'd tell her, give instructions what to do to perform it. Rub baby oil. Then he'd tell me, rub baby oil on her, perform oral sex. He says that he probably engaged in 15 sessions, and he would get paid about $800 each time. He says the biggest issue, though, that he had was Cassie just seemed so drugged out that he decided, I feel like she's going to die one day, and they're going to blame it on me. So he says that he records a video at a freak-off because he's scared. He says, quote, because after she passed out, I decided to record that. So in an event, anything worse happened if she died, anybody died, they'll be on camera, they'll be on video. Like, I wouldn't be responsible for any of that. He records it, but they catch on. He says Combs and two associates in ski masks start coming to get him, and Combs just starts threatening Jonathan. That's what he's accusing. Eventually, allegedly, Jonathan signs an NDA and takes allegedly $5 million of what some might call hush money. It's unconfirmed, but there is a screenshot of an agreement floating around on the internet. We don't know how accurate it is, but he did immediately start going on a real estate shopping spree in Florida.
Did he buy something?
Yes, he bought like a bunch of real estate. Now, hold on to Jonathan Odie because he's going to come back in the next episode as well.
Okay.
There were a few moments where they're pulling something from the evidence and Cassie would just kind of quietly shift in her chair. She just seems really uncomfortable on the chair. She's not trying to move or fidget too much, but anytime there's a moment where she's not being asked a question, she's like trying to readjust her belly, her positioning, and her shoulders will go up. And then she'll just kind of like lower them as if she's like releasing tension. And she reaches for tissues to wipe her tears. And again, this could be a very strong bias, but I was thinking about it and I'm like, I bet she's really lonely up there. Because it's not like you can just say, hey, can I have my husband sit next to me? Hey, can I like go and meditate for 10 minutes or like go cry in the bathroom? I mean, she can take a few breaks here and there, but I imagine that feeling to be very lonely. Like your brother, your husband, your cousin are in the courtroom. They're so far away. And there's all these scary people in between, and scary, not like threatening, but, attorneys are scary. They're intense. The jurors are just sitting right next to her.
The whole situation is shitty.
And it's just like, Prosecutor Johnson asks,
And how did you learn what a freak off was? Within the first year of our relationship, Sean proposed me this idea, this sexual encounter that he called voyeurism, where he would watch me have intercourse and sexual activity with a third party, specifically another man. When Sean first proposed freak offs, what was your reaction? Oh, I just remember like my stomach falling to my butt, like just the nervousness and the confusion in that moment. I think I was 22 at the time. I just turned 22. I didn't have a concept of how that would be a turn on, but I also felt a sense of responsibility with him sharing something like that with me, you know? So yeah, I was confused, nervous, but also loved him very much and wanted to make him very happy. So,
Whoa, okay.
How did Sean describe voyeurism to you? He described voyeurism as a fantasy that he had where he would want to see me having with another male and having sexual interaction. Yeah, he would watch. What was your reaction when Sean told you about voyeurism? I was shocked. I wasn't expecting anything like that. I just really, like, at a loss. I didn't know how to react. I didn't want to upset him if I said that it scared me or if I said anything outside of, okay, let's try it, because I was just always down for the things he wanted to do. I was really nervous, like really, really nervous. What, if anything, did Sean say to you about swinging? Swinging was brought up separately, and it was a lifestyle that he taught me about couples that switch partners. And yeah, I didn't really have too much knowledge of it. Did you agree to try a freak off when Sean first proposed one? I did. Approximately how old were you when Sean first proposed freak offs to you? I think I just turned 22. And how did it come? How did the term freak off come about? I honestly don't remember exactly how it came about. Can you describe for the jury, when you say the term freak off, what that entails? Basically, it entails the hiring of an escort and setting up the experience so that I could perform for Sean. And what did the performance involve at a high level? The performance involved... I'm sorry. She seems to start getting emotional. It just involved watching, Sean being able to watch me with the other person and direct us on what we were doing sexually. And when you say the other person, who are you referring to? The third party, the escort or dancer that would be hired? Cassie explains during the freak-offs, Combs would provide ecstasy and alcohol. What did you wear to the first freak-off? Specifically, I don't know exactly, but it was definitely an outfit from a sex store, Hustler, or something with some really high platform shoes, like dancing shoes. Always super see-through netting outfit. It varied, just like a sexy outfit from a store. What are some of the stores you would buy outfits at? In LA, there's a store called Pleasure Chest, Hustler on Sunset. Here in the city, there's just like little shops everywhere. She says that she would always wear those stripper dance shoes, just like extremely high heels, uncomfortable, but extremely high. She would wear them throughout the entire freak off. Sometimes if there was a break, she would take them off, but mainly she would wear them throughout.
Okay.
Who decided what you would wear to the freak offs? I would purchase outfits and show Sean and see what he liked the best. What, if anything, did you do to disguise your appearance? She states later that the very first time, Sean told her that they would be wearing masks, like a masquerade mask. And then later, sometimes she would wear glasses, sometimes she would wear wigs. What, if any, supplies were needed for freak-offs? Main supplies were baby oil, Astroglide as lubricants, and condoms. Who typically bought the supplies for the freak-offs? More often than not, it was the staff. Like, the room was usually stocked by the time we got there. If not, if it were like a last-minute situation that I set up, I would get things, or sometimes Sean would bring them. Initially, what kind of lighting was used for freak-offs? Initially, It was candlelit, so various candles. What kind of candles were used? At the time, really strong-smelling candles like Glade or Diptyque. Any just really strong-smelling. Approximately how many candles were used? Approximately 6 to 10. They were placed so that Sean could see me and the escort in the candlelight. Later, she says that there was a distinct smell during freak-offs, so perhaps that's why they used the very strong candles.
What does that mean?
Lots of just mixing of scents,
fluids,
of
like
body scents, baby oil, but also later there's blood and urine and... Besides lighting, were there any other uses for candle wax? A couple of times where it was poured on the body, but it wasn't common. When you say poured on the body, whose body? My own or Sean's? And specifically, she even goes on to mention that the candles, if they were the Glade ones, they were the Angel Whispers scent. And she says, if anybody knows what that smells like. Just like on 10. It was super pungent and mixed with oil and just all of the other scents.
I have no idea about those candles.
What other scents were there? I mean, it was warm. So he liked to keep it kind of warm in the hotel room during the freak-offs. So body odor, you know. Side note, I did see another interview previously of Cassie where she talks about being a germaphobe.
Do I have any phobias? I'm a germaphobe. Don't shake my hand if you didn't wash yours.
Yeah, and she does seem like very squeamish every time she talks about these incidents of like the freak-offs. How was the baby oil used during the freak-off? It was just as important as everything else being there. We used it quite a bit.
Everywhere. My God. The moment of talking about this must be so hard for her. Wow.
Can you please describe what happened at the initial first freak-off? We took drugs, we had a conversation, Sean had a conversation with the dancer, and then shortly after he came down to the room and performed and stood in the doorway and danced for a little while I just watched and while Sean watched us. What happened next? It was just a gradual, I would say, every freak-off was like directed by Sean, like he knew specifically where he wanted everyone to be, the lighting and such, so the first session we just kind of ended up getting closer and closer, talking to each other, and then eventually had to put oil on each other. Yeah. You use the word session. What do you mean by session? A session in a freak-off would be like one full time, the escort, until basically they finished. Do you recall how many sessions you had with the first escort at the first freak-off? I believe we had at least 2. After this freak-off, how did you feel? Well, I was high, so there wasn't too much feeling. I think it was a mixture of dirty and confusion, like, okay, he's really happy with me and I did something right, so... Really.
Yeah, but in the end, she was more or less in a permanent high during that whole time. He was basically drugging her all the time, allegedly.
Confusing. I didn't know that what was going to happen after that. I didn't know if we were going to be doing it more frequently because I was willing to. I didn't know. So, what if anything did you tell Sean about how you felt about the first freak-off? I honestly don't remember. She said within weeks he asked for another freak-off, and she responded in like the same kind of mixture of like nervousness, what am I going to do, but also I can't say no is the feeling. She says, like, I've already done it, and I ultimately said yes. Why did you feel you couldn't say no? Just didn't want to make him upset. Yeah, I didn't want to make him upset. I didn't want him to make him angry and regret having told me about this experience that was so personal. His trust meant a lot to me at that point. How frequently did you have freak-offs with Sean after they started? After they started, it became almost weekly, I would say.
In the end, there was always in the back, there was always the chains of having that contract with the record label. And there were probably threats made that if you ever don't do this or if you leave or whatever, you will have to pay for all expenses that we had for making your record and everything, the accommodations and all of that. So there, I bet there was some sort of how do you call it? Well, threats made towards her, and she was chained. She might think of it as, yes, I didn't want to hurt his feelings. That might be part of it, but another part was subconsciously being chained up like that.
Who was in charge of all the aspects of the freak-offs you mentioned? The hiring, the setup, etc. Eventually it became a job for me, pretty much, to where I knew that it is something that he wanted to do. I had the contacts to set it up and get a hotel room and all of that. But in the beginning, Sean set it up. He was in charge. Where was the baby oil placed? We poured it all over our bodies. Had to be glistening. Which participants in the freak-off, if any, used the baby oil? Everyone? What temperature was the baby oil when it was poured on your body? It was always heated. Keep the cap on it and put it in the sink with hot water and let it warm up. Who wanted the baby oil to be heated? Sean? You mentioned that the baby oil was used because you had to be glistening. Who told you that you needed to be glistening? Sean, it was his preference. How frequently would baby oil be applied to be glistening? Like every 5 minutes? It was a lot. He would, if he felt like we were too dry, he would let us know. What would he say? He would say, "You're too dry, you need to put on more oil, or you need to be glistening, you need to be shining."
Just imagine the mess. The complete mess of oil everywhere.
Why did you know what to do? It's a very choreographed experience. Who choreographed it? Sean. During the freak-offs, who applied baby oil to you? I applied it to myself, sometimes Sean, sometimes the escort. How did you usually apply baby oil? You just squirt it out of the bottle? Approximately how many bottles of baby oil would be used in a typical freak-off? A lot. I would say definitely somewhere close to 10. Now, yeah, side note, there were some evidence photos, and they were using, at least I'm assuming they were using the larger bottles. She does confirm it was the larger ones. 10 bottles is about like $80 per freak-off, which I highly doubt Combs is worried about the price. But aside from that, that's a gallon of baby oil. 10 bottles is a gallon. I mean, if you were to use baby oil for typical baby care applications, parents would probably go through a gallon of baby oil in a year. Even a full body massage only requires 3 fluid ounces of oil per session. They're using 140 ounces, so that's like 46 full body massages. Even if you were to get a massage almost every week, you could last almost a year with that much baby oil.
So it's basically a gallon dumped in the middle of the room.
Yeah, a hotel room.
Yeah, and how do you even clean baby oil?
Oh,
It
yeah.
doesn't even make sense.
Yeah. Now, obviously, this doesn't cover the people who use it for professional settings or for extenuating circumstances. Typically, athletes will use a lot of baby oil, but this is still an abnormally large amount of consumption of baby oil.
But wouldn't that mean like all of these hotels kind of know about this then? Because
there were some tweets circulating of employees at hotels that were like, "Hey, so Diddy just stayed at the hotel that I work at, and I'm telling you he's nasty." And like, we wouldn't really put 2 and 2 together because
I'm telling you, he's nasty. That is good. That is, yeah, but it's
like,
true.
what does that even mean? And like, you kind of assume that celebrities have wilder sex lives, quote unquote. Just to remind you, though, authorities said that they seized 1,000 bottles of baby oil during the raid on his homes. Like thousands of bottles, which is exponentially more money. But aside from the cost, once more, it is an insane quality. To which even before the trial, Agnifilo said he probably bought it in bulk, like a lot of Americans do at the local Costco. I'm paraphrasing, and I do think that before the trial started, I was like, "Sir, what a crazy thing to say. I think you're absolutely insane, and you got a few bolts loose, right?" But now I'm like, yeah, no, Mark Agnifilo would say something like that. He'd just be saying stuff, and him and Brian Steele, I feel like they say stuff, and I believe that they believe what they're saying.
Most likely, that's why they are saying it. Good Lord. That is way beyond buying in bulk. Come on.
Like, it's the craziest thing. It's like,
What does he have? Like a complete storage unit with, I don't know, 20 garage-sized storage units, one with baby oil, one with lotion, one with that glide stuff, one, I don't know, with pickles, and one with champagne and whatever. Buying in bulk does not mean like thousands of bottles.
I feel like you might genuinely believe that. Maybe I'm naive, and I think maybe they're just that good. Like, they say it with their full chest, but it's also just like their whole demeanor. Anytime that Mark Agnifilo is talking, he sounds like the type that would be like, I mean, yeah, bulk buying does make sense.
Yeah.
Like, that's the vibe he gives me. So it did get me a little bit confused. I mean,
correct.
Maybe they're just super convincing, and maybe that's why they're getting paid allegedly 7-8 figures to be on the defense team.
Wow.
I don't know. Both of them do have that teddy bear dad aura, which I'm saying this because
I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't want to be judgmental, but I don't see teddy bear aura in neither of them. I see. Oh, that's okay.
do have that teddy bear dad aura.
I'm not doing that.
I'm saying this because I'm sure the jurors are also receptive to the attorney's vibes and energies inside that courtroom, especially when you're there all day, Monday through Friday. I mean, like you can't avoid people's like quirks and personalities and sometimes charisma. Now, I do think, interestingly enough, Brian Steele and Mark Agnifilo are more charming when the jurors are not in the room.
Really?
During like the hearings.
What does that mean?
So they'll be talking to the judge about even like debating that Cassie's husband shouldn't be in the room, right? And I don't think that action is charming, but it's the way that they phrase things and the way that they try to make jokes at certain times. Not jokes because nothing's funny, but like there will be an awkward moment and they'll kind of lean into the awkward moment. So it's very interesting. I'm curious to see how it translates to the jurors in the next 7 weeks. Now, Prosecutor Johnson continues. After a freak-off, can you describe the condition of the room where the freak-off was held? The room was usually pretty bad off. There was oil all over the walls, the door handles, the bed, the sheets. We often would get to the room. I would need to call and ask for extra linens and towels and stuff like that to try and mitigate those problems, but oil, candle wax, all over the place. So she would ask for extra sheets and try to cover the couch. But, I mean, you're not really a gallon of baby oil.
No, a sheet will not hold that
You
back.
described wax and oil damage. What else, if anything, was soiling the linens? Sometimes blood, urine. So starting with blood, how would blood get on the linens at freak-offs? I was expected to have freak-offs on my period. Did you want to have freak-offs on your period? No, I don't think anybody really wants to do that. And you also mentioned urine. How would urine get on the linens at freak-offs?
Well,
Sometimes Sean would have, he would have the escort urinate on me. Sometimes there was so much going on, I don't know how they got soiled the way they did, to be completely honest. So focusing on the urine, did you want an escort or Sean to urinate on you? No. And before that happened, what, if anything, did you discuss about being urinated on? There was no conversation. It just was a turn on for him, so it happened. Can you please describe how it felt when this happened? I mean, just as humiliating if anybody were there to see it. It was disgusting. It was too much. It was overwhelming. I choked. There couldn't have been anything on my face that was reading that I wanted to be doing that. I was kind of just laid on the floor in a position that I couldn't easily get out of. So were you able to tell the escort to stop? I just kind of put my hands up, and eventually Sean saw and he told them to stop. Why did you put your hands up? Nothing I could really do laying on the floor. You mentioned choking. Why were you choking? Too much urine in my mouth? And besides the escort urinating on you, who else, if anyone, did that? Sean? Did you want Sean to urinate on you?
no.
I don't want anyone to urinate on me, no.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
And when in relation to the escort urinating on you, did Sean urinate on you? The same time. Were there freak-offs where you ran out of baby oil? Defense attorney Estevao leans into the microphone on the table. Objection, Your Honor, at this point, it's getting a little cumulative. AKA, it's a lot of repeating evidence that adds little information beyond what's already being established. They're saying, like, we're just doing too much baby oil questions. Basically, you can't keep repeating stuff to try and overemphasize a point if you're not adding any more information or substance to the case. Or it's like if you have multiple expert witnesses that are all testifying the same thing over and over again, then you don't need that many multiple expert witnesses. The judge tells Prosecutor Johnson, let's wrap this up and move on.
Okay.
You also mentioned Astroglide. How was that used at freak-offs? Estevao leans in. Same objection, irrelevant. Prosecutor Johnson this time is not having it. Your Honor, it's a supply. The judge calls for a sidebar. So in court, when there's a sidebar, the bailiff will actually come to like the middle of the courtroom and he will be watching everyone. Like no one's allowed to talk because technically the judge is still on the bench, right? And you see the defense attorneys, you see the prosecutors, and you see the judge literally do a huddle on the side of the courtroom and they just play white noise. But then when you get the transcripts, you can actually see what was talked about unless it's a sealed sidebar. So I always find like a very interesting thing because when it's a sidebar, it's like, wait, why did they call a sidebar? Now I'm so curious. And then later you find out. Now, at this moment in the sidebar, the judge is asking Prosecutor Johnson, Ms. Johnson, maybe you can help us with where we're going right now. I think the objection is grounded in lack of relevance and also the cumulative nature of the questioning. Am I right about that? Estevao says, that's right. The judge says, maybe if you can give us some guidance as to where you're going next, that would be helpful. Yes, Your Honor. We are going through the various supplies that were used because those are supplies that were demanded by the defendant, that were at every freak-off, that were consistent, which showed a pattern, which showed how he controlled the events that happened at these freak-offs. I will not ask any more oil questions. I have one question on lubricant, but I'm going to march through with different supplies that were present. That's fine. The judge is like, that's fine. I understood the objection to be mainly on the cumulative nature on this. I think we had about 20 questions on baby oil issues, and I think we can condense that a little bit, and you'll avoid the objection. Is that fair?
How long was this baby oil talk? Was it like an hour, 2 hours? Was it like, did it feel like it was extended that?
I didn't, and maybe because the baby oil was a very big lure, and
is she getting a cold a little bit? She's a little bit stuffy.
maybe it's not the most factual evidence against the charges that he's being charged with. I thought the jurors were engaged.
Oh, you thought the jurors were engaged?
Yeah, I
Okay,
thought
okay.
that it was, I don't know if it's like importance to the case or maybe it's, shocking information.
Got it.
But it didn't feel overly like, oh my God, let's move on. There were other times where I was like, oh my goodness, like we don't need to know the past 10 residences in which she lived unless you're going to like tie it into something, which I felt like sometimes it was and a lot of the times it wasn't. But this was not one of those situations where I was like, wait, what's happening?
Yeah.
But to which Mark Agnifilo, lead defense counsel, says, I was going to say slippery slope, but I'm not going to say it.
So he's making a joke.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's how they end the sidebar, which is like gnarly because to end the sidebar with a baby oil joke, what is happening right now, which
Yeah,
if
right.
you're like, are you sure that was a lot of questions on the baby oil? There were a lot of questions on the baby oil. I will give you that, okay? So there were more throughout the entire direct. Were there other ways of applying baby oil at a freak-off? There was one time where I think I got to a hotel in Beverly Hills and there was a pool, like blow-up pool, and it was filled with lube and oil, so that was a different way. When there was a blow-up pool that was filled with lube and oil, what did you do with the pool? I don't know what happened to the pool, honestly. Well, when there was that pool and oil, did you get into that pool? I did, with my outfit, my shoes. It was quite dangerous. Who, if anyone, asked you to get into the pool? Sean, it was his idea. Did you want to get into a pool of baby oil? No, especially not in a hotel room like that. It was such a mess. It was like, what are we doing? Yeah. Why did you get into the pool with baby oil? At that point, I couldn't say no. It would have been bad. Yeah. Yeah. When you say bad, what do you mean? What concerns did you have about not getting into the pool with baby oil?
He beat her up.
That, amongst other things, just his temper. If that is something that he wanted, Sean wanted to happen, that's what's going to happen. There wasn't any other way around it. And now with the Astroglide and baby oil, Cassie explains that if they ran out of it, what would happen when you ran out of it? We would either call somebody, staff, to bring it or ask the bell desk and give them a tip. When you say staff, what staff are you talking about? Sean's staff. Which members of Sean's staff would resupply the hotel rooms? Assistants, usually? Before leaving the hotel, what, if anything, did you do to clean up the linens you described? I mean, there wasn't really too much you could do, but just give a good tip and hope that they would help out. I would just try to clean up what I could. Usually like an assistant or staff or somebody would come, I believe, after. She says that, in fact, sometimes they would get so many charges for the damage in the room, which completely understandable that the hotels would do that. She says that she heard through conversations with some of Combs' staff members, and she doesn't remember the exact number, but there have been numbers circulating, tens of thousands of dollars.
I mean, come on, if you pour oil on furniture, on a couch, on like an armchair or something, or even the mattresses, everything is just basically soaked with oil. There are stains you can't clean. Furniture has to be removed. Carpet has to be removed. Walls have to be repainted. Jesus.
Yeah, because I imagine they have to like rip up the carpet.
Yes.
There you go.
The furniture and the walls.
Yeah.
I remember specifically hearing like a number that was crazy. It was having to redecorate the room. It was like a really high number to fix it.
That's so interesting. Like even with that, he still chooses to go to hotels.
Yeah.
In a public, not public, but like rather than his residence.
Because I guess they're bringing escorts.
Right.
Are you aware which hotel charged that really high number? the Intercontinental Hotel in New York. Which, side note, Cassie says
Yeah,
more. The
I mean,
Intercontinental.
just imagine, that's not cheap furniture there. Or you've got it in the, look, in the curtains, in the carpet, everywhere. Wow. That would be disgusting.
Hotel in New York. Which, side note, Cassie says once the freak-offs became her job, Combs would just tell her what to do, and pretty quickly, over time, she says, I knew that it wasn't something that I wanted to be doing, especially as regularly as it became, but again, I was just in love and I wanted to make him happy. And I didn't really know what no could turn into. What do you mean by that? Making him angry, very honestly, also making him uncomfortable that I knew this thing and that I no longer wanted to do it. Ultimately, at that point, Sean controlled a lot of my life, whether it was my career, the way I dressed, like everything. And I just didn't feel like I had much say in it at that time, being like super, really young, naive, total people pleaser. I didn't know if he would be upset enough to be violent or if he would write me off and just not want to be with me at all.
Wow.
Eventually, Cassie says there's the element that she was scared that there was also so much blackmail material. She basically felt like, quote, if I didn't do it, that it would be hung over my head in that way or that these things would become public. Which, from my angle and perception, it looks like Combs is shaking his head lightly, which I feel like he does this often when he wants to either show the jury that he doesn't believe what she's saying or a strong, like, no, this isn't what happened. It's like...
But it is a strategy of his to record stuff like that and then to use that as pressure.
Like a very, like, no, why would she say that? No, I disagree. This is crazy that she's saying that. He doesn't do that when it's discussing violence or even parts of the freak-offs itself. That's what's very interesting. It's always like moments like this.
Blackmail.
Yeah, and then there was another point which, it's like the same, slightly similar questions, so I didn't include it because, I mean, the direct examination was over the span of 2 days. It's over 10 hours. But in one point she says, like, he has a lot of resources. And, like, he was just shaking his head no.
I wonder if that has, because it's so related to the RICO charge and trafficking, maybe blackmail.
And so he's just shaking his head lightly. And she says initially that these videos were recorded on like small tape-filled cameras. And then eventually it morphed into iPhones, iPads, computers. They were recorded on both Cassie and Combs' devices, which sometimes they would later watch the videos together. Cassie says, I would watch them with Sean afterwards usually when we were having intimate relations, but I also, if I saw them and I was on my own, I was deleting them. She says if she sees a video on her phone, she's erasing it. I mean, she's asked, why did you delete the video that you found on your devices? It's humiliating, disgusting. I never wanted anyone to see me like that. It just was not okay for me. And I felt like it was just tossed around. Like the idea of it was tossed around like it was nothing, like objectifying me and putting me in these really compromising, gross positions with strangers that I just... She says that she would frequently ask Combs to delete the videos on his devices, especially because so many assistants, staff members just constantly have access to his phone and his computer, but he would just threaten to blackmail her with them whenever he was upset about something. She says, quote, he just wanted to hurt me. How frequently did he bring up the freak-off videos to you? I mean, once is too much, but several times. Cassie says that she was so scared that he would be mad enough to put them out, and then I would have to answer to my mother. Like, I just feared for my career. I feared for my family. Just embarrassing, all of it. It's horrible and disgusting. Like, no one should do that to anyone. It could ruin everything that it worked for. Just make me look like a slut. I would be shamed. Like, I wasn't supposed to be on those videos. She's saying, like, she didn't even want to be there. I mean, the leverage of having an incriminating or derogatory, humiliating video of someone telling them they're going to release it if you don't behave the way that they want you to, or whatever the case may be, it was just always like that. Like,
completely in control. Completely, yes. Absolutely terrible. There was basically not much she could do, you know. Because in the end, the power difference was just there. It was just there. being a 22, 23, 24-year-old girl, what are you going to do against that, epic person, that big shot up there? There's hardly anything you can do. And yeah, the abuse will go on and on and on. Until at one point, many, many years later, these people maybe just have that moment of, now,
That was a big part of our relationship. She says, for example, they went to Cannes Film Festival, and this was in her lawsuit. But on their flight back home, it was a commercial flight where there's a lot of other people nearby. Combs was clearly upset with her of a fight that they had in Cannes. He pulls up his laptop and starts playing a video. It's a video that she thought she deleted of a freak-off.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
And
wow.
he essentially, it's insinuated that he forced her to watch it the entire way back. She said when they landed in New York, they ended up going to dinner and they had a freak-off. She said, honestly, at that point, whatever was going to make him not be angry at me and threatening me, I was willing to do. Yeah, I just didn't want to feel scared anymore. And one thing he made me feel like it was something I was good at. That was on top of the fact that he was violent with her. Like, the violence was always in the back of her mind. Interestingly, she testifies that the conversation about freak-offs happens around the same time that the relationship starts getting violent. So it's relatively close together. She's asked, why did you agree to a freak-off? And, okay, this is where I do think that Cassie is trying really hard to be honest. Because there are moments like this where she's so candid and she just says, that's a great question. I wanted to make him happy. I was in a really significantly mature relationship that I don't think I was prepared for, now when I look at it.
There you go.
But yeah, I loved him. I didn't want him to think that I thought anything bad of him for it. I just wanted to make him happy. She says that the best thing that she could do basically was just try to disassociate during the freak-offs. I just felt like it was all I was good for to him. I just felt pretty horrible about myself. I felt disgusting. I was humiliated. I didn't have those words to put together at the time, like how horrible I really felt. And I couldn't talk to anyone about it. So she had to use drugs during every freak-off to disassociate and numb herself. She said it would be a range of ecstasy, marijuana, ketamine, GHB, sometimes mushrooms, just whatever there was, later cocaine. And it was always Sean providing the drugs at the freak-offs.
Yep.
And Prosecutor Johnson brings it back to the urination because I think there were maybe some things that were a little bit confusing about it. And she's asking, why didn't you say anything when you didn't want to be urinated on? She says, in that moment I was squeamish immediately and high. And in the moment with this man, that's what happened. That's not a whole lot of control you have at that point of taking that many drugs and being laid on the floor with two men standing over you, peeing on you.
And then on the other hand, her saying no would have ended with him probably either kicking, beating, whatever. So you've got two evils. And you have to choose. You have to choose between one evil. So are you going to have somebody physically hurt you, or on the other hand, somebody humiliate you? What is there to choose? You can't do a right choice there. There's nothing you can do that is correct. And so you take the one that doesn't hurt on an immediate basis. It hurts in the long run much, much more. The humiliation is much more effective in the long run. But you are thinking of the pain in the moment, and you don't want a fist in your face right then and there. What was she to do?
Could have gotten up and screamed, I guess. Why didn't you say no when that happened? I thought that it was obvious that I didn't want to do it, I guess. She's asked, how much time out of your week did freak-offs take? It would depend on how long they were. They ranged anywhere between 36, 48 to 72 hours. I feel like the longest one was over 4 days, maybe even more, on and off with breaks. So it was a significant part of the week.
36 being The lowest?
Yeah. And this was happening once a week.
Wow.
She says that the average freak off would last 2 to 3 days, and she would be awake the full time that it's happening on drugs. The longest one that she remembers was 4 days. She says, quote, I often would try to speed it up if anyone wasn't really paying attention. So to further break down the freak offs, Cassie explains, there's like acts to it. And each of one of them is sessions. So each time that an escort ejaculates is a session. But there's multiple sessions throughout the span of 36 to 72 hours. But there's acts within the sessions. So the first act of the session would be self-pleasuring while looking at each other. This is what she's saying. When you say looking at each other, who would you be looking at? I would be looking at the escort and they would be looking at me. I would describe what I saw in detail, and yeah, that's kind of how the beginning went. Why would you describe what you saw in detail? That's what turned Sean on. That was his fantasy. So yeah. How did you feel about describing what you were doing in the masturbation step of the session? I mean, it was just always pretty awkward. I'm a pretty laid back person, so like sitting there and describing somebody's penis to another male was just awkward and pretty humiliating, but eventually it just became normal. Did you want to be describing what you were doing intimately? No, I did not. What was the next step in the session? Self-pleasure was just continued to put oil on, eventually get to each other, the escort and I, and actually start touching each other. That would eventually lead to oral activities. When you move to touching the escort, how would you know when to move from self-pleasuring to touching the escort?
Sean
More
would
often
tell
than
us.
not, I would ask if it's okay for me to. She would ask Sean. It was his fantasy. He was controlling the whole situation. He was directing it. He was doing the lighting. He was telling us where to be, what to say, how to act in the room. I would just try to speed the process along. It was, personally, if I get it done, then it's over, and then we move on to the next thing, and I just wanted it to be over. And after the oral intimacy,
Very understanding.
what typically was the next step? That would lead
Or understandable, not understanding. Very understandable.
to intercourse, and depending on the familiarity with the escort, sometimes Sean and the escort would both have intimate relations with me or doing something at the same time. Sometimes Sean would just watch. When you say that
Okay.
he would be doing something with you at the same time, what is that something? If I was having intercourse with an escort, he would walk up and have me give him oral activities. It was just like a lot happening at once. Cassie, also in a now viral moment, is asked about when the escorts would finish. Usually they would finish like wherever Sean instructs, and when it was okay for them per Sean. But if they did, they would usually do it on her, and then her and Sean would go into the next room. So usually they get hotel suites. So I'm assuming all of this is happening in the living room because they're covering the couch with the linen. They would go into the bedroom inside the hotel suite. And this is the now viral moment where she says, Sean and I would go into the next room and he would want me to put the fluid on his body. Sean was usually right there directing it where it could be. So she states they go in there, and she would transfer the substance from her body to, quote, usually on his chest, on his nipples. She says that if the escorts would finish before they were told, they would get paid less. And she's also asked, when you say you wanted it to be over, what are you referring to? The freak-off session? I mean, more often than not, it would just...
Sometimes I know where these questions are supposed to lead to, but sometimes these questions are just so absolutely stupid. My goodness.
I want to be able to go to the other room where I could just spend time alone with Sean. When you say get to the other room where you could spend time alone, who was in the room where you were spending time alone? Just me and Sean. And the individual stages that you described, how long typically did each of those stages last? Felt like forever. One thing could be hours, honestly, depending on how high we were, yeah. How would Sean react when you try to speed up the process? He would tell me to slow it down, or tell both me and the escort to slow it down. I could often, if I left the room to use the bathroom, I could hear Sean telling the escort to slow it all down because I usually just wanted to hurry. Besides asking you to slow it down, were there occasions where you had to start a stage over if you moved too quickly? Yeah, we would go back to square one. Approximately how many sessions would you have with one escort during a freak-off? I would say at least 2 or 3, but a freak-off could be 3 to 4 different men. And when more than one escort was present, how did the intimacy proceed? Just like it was very like porn, like explicit materials. It was just like I was an object being heavily objectified by men in that scenario. Just having to be the only female in the room, like with all the sexual stuff. It just having to entertain one more person, make sure one more person is satisfied. Yeah. During these sessions, where was Sean physically relative to you and the escort? If he wasn't involved, he would just be like outside the room, kind of covered up, not seeing. You could just hear his voice or in the corner. If he was involved, he would be right next to us. If Sean was in the corner of the room, what was he generally doing there? He was generally self-pleasuring and just talking. What kinds of things did he say?
I'm once again at the point where all of these escorts, I mean, come on, guys, you must have gotten or read the room. You must have understood the situation. Girl is drugged. She's seemingly not wanting to do any of this. And there's this other dude telling everybody what is to happen and what you're getting $800 for that. There is in no way that $1,000 will make all of that right. I do not understand why nobody ever said anything.
He'd just ask me how the other party's private part felt, like what it looked like, how it felt. Oh, this is so awkward. She says that.
Wow.
Sometimes if he wasn't in the room, he would quote, there was like a couple of occasions where he said he wanted to watch from a different room, where he would set up like my phone and his phone would be on FaceTime so he could watch while he wasn't like present in the actual room. So I was still expected to do the same thing even though he wasn't there. She says that if he actually left though and they weren't on FaceTime, everything would stop. She's like, I don't want to do this. Like, get off of me, basically. So it's like clear it's a performance for him.
Yeah.
It's not something that continues if she's like, oh, if he's not watching, no. Like, I don't want to be doing this. She also is like stating, I've never reached out to any of these escorts without Sean and like his guidance, basically. Like, I've never tried to form relationships with them. I've never tried to meet them alone. Like, nothing. Also, there was another issue. During freak-offs, what difficulty, if any, did escorts have in getting or maintaining stimulated down there? It was actually pretty frequent with people that we didn't know well. Yeah, and they would express it like, it's like every time Sean would talk, it would just throw them off. Or if he moved a candle or, it's distracting, I guess. What did Sean do when escorts were having trouble with maintaining stimulation down there? He would give them a pep talk.
A pep talk? What does that mean? Like, you got this?
Yeah. Were there any occasions where Sean offered the escorts drugs like Viagra? Yes. She also stated...
I mean, seriously, if that guy is giving me a pep talk because that's not working, he's making sure that it's not working by giving me that pep talk. Come on, that's not...
It's that he pressured her to take it, and it made her feel, quote, sensitive and engorged. She states that she did not want to take it. And there was just a lot of things that she really hated doing that she was mentioning, especially kissing. So witness 2 said the same thing. She said, I was really against kissing. I just felt like it was too intimate, but it still happened anyway. Like, she told Sean, she says that it made her squeamish, and he would still request it on different occasions. The only part of the freak-offs that she enjoyed are the times that she could spend with him. And I think that this is where the direct examination keeps bringing in text messages to show, like, there are times where she initiates a freak-off, and she's trying to explain, the only reason I initiated a freak-off is so that I could spend time with him alone. Yep. It was the only way that he would spend time with me alone. She says, as sad as it was, I thought, like, it was the only time I could get. She said, I definitely brought up not wanting to do freak-offs, but gently, because I didn't want to make him upset or angry with me for even sharing it, but I just treaded lightly when I would bring it up. Sometimes I would email him about it like I didn't want to. I just didn't want anything to happen. When you say you didn't want anything bad to happen, what do you mean by that? Violent? But also him just being like, okay, well, I'll just find somebody else to do it with. Like, when you really care about somebody and you're in love with them, you don't want to disappoint them. So she keeps bringing this up throughout like the 10 hours. She just keeps saying she never wanted him to feel embarrassed or like made fun of or insecure about his fantasies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is interesting because witness 2 also testified he didn't like being looked in the eye. So it seems like, I don't know, there's like a lot of people have been psychoanalyzing some of the stuff. I don't think I'm qualified, but I will say it's probably very complicated. Some people are even speculating if there were any sort of childhood incidents that would have led to this. I've seen a lot of that online. I truly don't know. I don't know if any of that is going to be revealed during the next 7 weeks, but it is very interesting, I would say.
But yeah, it is all very complicated. I think that really says all about everything here.
As a result of freak-offs, what, if any, medical issues did you experience? I had a lot of stomach issues and like gastrointestinal issues from taking drugs. I also would get frequent UTIs, which are, I mean, if you had one, you know how painful it is. Just stopping you there, Miss Ventura, what does UTI stand for? Urinary tract infection. So how frequently did you get these UTIs? When we were having frequent freak-offs, it was sometimes like they were back to back. Sometimes I couldn't get rid of it, and I was actually doing the freak-off with an infection. She says it was very painful. It varied.
Yes.
I tried to flush it out, just drink tons of water, cranberry juice, cranberry pills. I got to the point where Cipro, I think it's like an antibacterial medicine that you take for UTIs. It didn't even work anymore. Yeah, it was just like a mess, like really painful for a long time. I actually can't believe that I actually dealt with that. How did you feel to have sex while you had a UTI? I mean, horrible.
It doesn't
it's the most
feel good.
uncomfortable burning. I wouldn't advise it. There's text messages entered into evidence where Combs is asking Cassie about her vocals, and she says, "They're good. I have all these sores on my tongue, so it's kind of uncomfortable, and I think I have another UTI. How's your day?" Cassie explains her text to the jury. She says, "Occasionally I would get sores on my tongue from the freak-offs, the taking drugs, substances, and just friction in my mouth." What was the friction in your mouth from? From
come
oral
on.
activities, also having my mouth on things where there was oil and Astroglide and lubricants. How did the mouth sores you would get feel? Just stinging and uncomfortable. Combs texts Cassie back, "I'm good. Shit. Need you to go to the doc."
How's Cassie's like energy or demeanor during this whole or most of this?
I would say very laid back. I would see her as very laid back, sometimes in thought, but focused.
I don't know how she did it. I don't know how she did it. I mean, I saw my sister when she was pregnant twice. The amount of just emotional turmoil she was in on a daily basis, because it's just science. Like, that's how the brain chemistry and like all these chemicals work inside the body, the hormones. She, I don't know how she did it. Her voice was steady. She didn't sound like she's overly trying to get sympathy. She didn't sound like, woe is me. She didn't sound angry. She just sounded like, I'm about to tell you guys genuinely how I felt, and that's all I can do at this point. Like, that's the feeling I got. It didn't even feel like she was trying to convince the jury of one thing or another. It just felt like, I am going to answer the questions as honestly as possible.
Yep.
And there would be moments where she would be asked a question and she would start her answer, and then she would say, "I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?" And so I heard some people saying, maybe it's pregnancy brain, right? But when I was watching her answering a lot of these questions, it felt like she, in certain questions, maybe went back to that time period. And then, I don't know if maybe she's having flashbacks.
Most probably. Such traumatizing things just throw you back. Flashbacks would be very, very likely to happen. And in those moments, you are in that place. You taste, you smell, you feel these things happen, and you're just gone for a second or two or three or a minute even, and you don't realize it completely until you're out of it again. Sometimes you're in half of a flashback, and there are just specific sensations you can feel or smell or taste, whatever. It's just some things that your body chemistry brings back up. Taste, for instance, or the memory of a taste, and all of that. It's The human mind is crazy.
I mean, physically, she doesn't look like, oh my God, I'm so traumatized. But it just was interesting. Like, it seemed like she was in the moment. There were also other times where, I don't know why this like made me so sad. She was talking about the Intercontinental Hotel and just how Sean was dragging her. The way she describes it is so emotionless and very like, it is what it is. Like, he was just dragging me and kicking me. Yeah. Like, it's very like, it is what it is. That is what happened. I would say there's a lot of times throughout where her voice shakes or she grabs a tissue, but there's twice when she gets very emotional. One is in the direct and one is actually in the cross, or like the redirect. But she said I had PTSD episodes. I know Sean was concerned that I was having seizures, sleepwalking quite a bit. My body was, in my mind, my body was telling me that I needed to just chill out.
Yeah,
A text message
most
thread from
likely.
June 15, 2013 is entered into evidence. In it, Cassie texts Combs, your sex makes me high. No, like literally, I feel like I took a painkiller, LOL. During your relationship with Sean, who did you want to have intimate relations with? I wanted to have intimate relations with him. Did you want to have intimate relations with escorts? No. But after that, Combs responds back in the text. Dope, I was thinking about a freak off, but I need to be focused. She responds, LOL. I've been thinking about one too. We were pretty focused last time, just has to be the right people or person. She says that this just was the normal way to respond when he brings up freak-offs. She never wanted him to think that she didn't want to do it. Approximately how many freak-offs in total did you have with Sean? It's impossible to know. Hundreds? She says that, yeah, the violence, the blackmail is also scary, but she just desperately wanted to be loved by him. She says her voice is relatively the same throughout the direct, like I said, but maybe it's the word that she uses, and I don't know if maybe I just like relate to it for some odd reason. She said, I really fell in love with him. I traveled with him everywhere. I was in the studio. I was just like a little shadow. Cassie says immediately on dating, Combs just starts ripping into her appearance. She says he would say anything from, I look too Mexican with my hair like that, to, I needed to have my nails done a certain way. I mean, he would clown my chipped nail polish and dirty sneakers. That was like a thing, but appearance was very important to him. My appearance, it varied on what he wanted me to dress like depending on what was going on. Some days he would want me to be really sexy and be his woman, and then other days, I could be on my tomboy looks and stuff like that, but he was very involved in it. You mentioned your nails earlier. How did Sean say he wanted your nails to look? He preferred them to be white. So I know some of you guys didn't get the context when I said Tenny Garagos, the lead defense attorney, had white nail polish on. And I do think that Nicole Westmoreland, if I'm not mistaken, either it's like a baby pink or it's white. They've got white nail polish.
Baby pink.
She says he preferred them being white from the beginning of our relationship. They just always had to be done for sure. But specifically during the freak-offs, like white or French tip. In the lawsuit, she states that the white, he liked the contrast from usually the black male body parts. What else, if anything, did Sean say he wanted you to do with your physical appearance? I mean, we had discussions about breast implants and just tons of conversations about my body. There'd be comments about working out or just like keeping my shape a certain way when there wasn't much there to begin with. So with her 10-album deal with Bad Boy Records, Cassie says, and this is clearly verifiable, she only releases one album, and even from a public perspective, her career, she was on a high with Me and You, and then she gets signed with Bad Boy Records. She says it feels intentional. She feels like every day she was just doing busy work that would keep her in the studio. She's making hundreds of songs. None of them are getting released. It's like he's stalling her career. He's making her full-time job freak-offs. She's saying music wouldn't come out, but also I would get a lot of opportunities that I would come through that I was told not to participate in, be it a modeling campaign, which was something that I actually did before music, or a runway show. Those are things I just had to say no to, and Sean advised her to say no.
He was just keeping her shackled. She was his object. That was it. Yeah.
So this is just stalling her entire career. I mean, she's even asked very candidly in the direct, why did you not release another album during this time? And she just leans into the mic and she goes, you're asking me?
Yeah, right. There you go. It's never the artist's decision to release an album. If you've got a record deal, then it's not then you are not making that decision.
Cassie testifies one of Combs' managers, who is also managing her, told her that he's managing her with one hand tied behind his back.
The manager couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So her whole life is just preparing for a freak off, doing her nails, getting a wax, getting a tan, getting all the supplies, the baby oil, getting the hotel, finding the escort, making sure that Sean approves them, then participating in the freak off, and then recovering from the freak off. I mean, that's a whole week.
And this lasted like more than a decade.
Yeah.
And they're public figures that's actually being seen all the time, but nobody knew
And
for a decade.
There were actually like gossip columns that called her a gold digger. They made it seem like, oh, she was a aspiring musician, got with a billionaire, and then is now just living the good life.
Whoa.
She said emotionally after the freak
I
off.
mean, okay, if nobody knows, then of course it might just look like that. But that's another thing. Don't judge a book by its cover. You never know what the person who walks by you on the street is going through. Don't judge a book by its cover. If you don't know, then shut up, you know.
She would just feel really gross and really empty. And so she would just take lots of opioids because, quote, I didn't want to feel what was actually going on in my mind, in my real life, in real time.
Yep.
It was just
Yep.
an escape for me.
Understand.
And it's just crazy that she's on the stand testifying, and there would be, like I said, Combs would have different reactions. Sometimes he's like glasses on, staring at the evidence screen. Sometimes he's like jotting down like he's doing math homework. Sometimes he's just stoic like a statue, leaned back, watching her. Other times he's turning around and mouthing to his mom, I love you. Which, side note, Janice Combs has an intense vibe, like I said earlier. She's tiny, terrifying, but the whole time that Cassie is testifying, or a good chunk of it, she's leaned forward, elbows on her knees, intently staring at Cassie, listening to every word. And you know, I heard a lot of public say, like,
intimidation.
I'm just saying, my mom, no matter how much she supports me, I don't think she could hear stuff like that. She would be crying. Something would happen. She can't just be like staring down the person on the stand.
Yeah, but
Cassie,
she's not a regular mom. That lady is not a regular mom, allegedly.
talks about how even on her birthday, he forced her into a freak off, which she really begged not to, but it didn't work. And then there were other things that he forced her to do. There is about 10 minutes from the Las Vegas Strip, there's a very distinct green-hued building in a strip mall. It looks like it could be a PetSmart, but it's green, emerald green. It looks like an arcade. It's 18,000 square feet. Once you walk in, there's like a menu board. Sunday through Thursday, couples, $70. Weekends, $80. Single males, $92 to $120. Single females, $26. No open-toed shoes, no athletic wear. You must be 18 to enter. Once you get inside, there's like a few interesting rooms. The most interesting being called the shadow room, where you just see silhouettes of people moving and doing things. It is one of the older, more well-known sex clubs in Las Vegas called the Green Door. Cassie testifies that she was taken to these sex clubs, and sometimes they would bring escorts, and he would also watch at these clubs, and she just did not want to be there at all. Oh, and then another point that I thought was important was, this is what I mean by I feel like she's candid. Like, I feel like she's trying to be very honest. There's this point where she talks about how one of the escorts, Jules, comes to the club with them, and she's asked, did you want to have intimate relations with Jules? And she said, no, not at the club, no. Did you want to have intimate relations with Jules ever? And she goes, no. And like, her laugh is kind of confusing at first, but then she explains, Jules, like, within all of it, it was like a safe place. I saw him a lot. We actually had our own friendship. So being able to have intimate relations with Jules instead of somebody at the club was better than somebody I didn't know, if that makes sense. But I think the way like she even answers no, it's like when you talk about your best guy friend, it's like, oh, no. Like,
Yes,
whoa.
yes.
It's like, oh gosh.
Yeah.
So it seems like she's like feeling a lot of the questions being asked instead of being like, no, yeah.
And everything she said.
She's listening. That's what I meant. She is focused, and she has, I think the word master plan is like wrong, but she has a path, and she's got she's got a destination she's walking towards. And that focus brings her there. She knows that the path will be heavy, hard, and painful, but she's walking it nevertheless. Very, very brave and courageous woman. Very brave.
That like makes sense, right? Like I think if you have somewhat understanding of how these type of situation works, you can see how and why this happened.
Yeah. I think it's just complicated because there's so many elements. I think it's like everything is a building block. It's the age gap, it's when they met, it's the power dynamic. It's like everything is a building block. And when you only take out one building block and say, hey, look, it's like obviously.
And I was even thinking like she started, you know, they met 19 and then the freak off started when she was 22. And then every single time she was completely drugged up for days on end.
Yes.
Just the drugs alone for days on end at that young age for that many years is already changing everything in her brain chemistry.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And she can be, she's lucky that she didn't OD and pass during all that time. You know, she can literally be happy that she's still alive and didn't just leave one day.
So just that alone, you cannot say that she is a person that can, you know, make decisions on her free own will, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just.
I did see some comments echoing that sentiment. I saw a lot of people on Reddit talking about, technically they believe, right, and it's not really up to us, it's up to the jurors, but they believe that's like a good point for sex trafficking because a lot of sex traffickers will actually get their victims addicted to drugs and make them feel like they need to take these drugs so that they can get through the forced work, the trafficking, if you will.
That's what Diddy did.
I think the drugs do play a big element into it. Again, we're not the ones, it's the jurors.
Allegedly.
She recounts the first time that he was ever violent with her. They were at a party. They were at this dinner with a lot of other people, and she had seen him flirting with somebody. And there was another person that looked at Cassie and was like, like they saw that she saw it, and she just shrugged her shoulders like, whatever, because what is she supposed to do? And when they get into the car, she says, quote, he knocked me around and was just really mean. His security driver was in the car too, but quote, he hit me in the side of my head and I fell to the floor of the car. We were in his Escalade, just shook me up and scared me quite a bit to the point where I was just trying to get out of the car. I was just shocked. I didn't necessarily understand what happened and why he was so angry, except for the little bit he said he was like hitting me in the car, and I don't know, I just hid out at home after that. She also does recount there was a time that she did fight back. They were at an Ace of Diamonds club, and she remembers that they were leaving. She had been talking to a producer about music. He called her a slut or a bitch or something. They get in the car and she punched him in the face. She had never hit him before. She said she punched him in the face. And she said she punched him as hard as she could punch him, basically.
Good on her. Good on her.
What was Sean's response after you hit him? His whole demeanor just switched over. I remember his eyes went black. It was just like we were in an Escalade, but the two sitting in the middle, the two seats that are separate from each other with the windows down, and we had a friend kind of like following us back to the house. So all of that went down with the windows down, and I punched him, he attacked me, and I was like basically underneath the back seat in the Escalade just trying to cover my face. And Sean was stomping on my face with his foot. How long did Sean stomp on your face with his foot? The ride back to the house was short, but I mean, the whole ride was a fight until we got there, probably like a 10-minute up the hill from the party. It was just me trying to defend myself and cover myself up. I was just being, I mean, I never experienced anything like that before, like getting that badly beaten.
That is just, I don't know, that's just terrible. How? I will never wrap my head around people being like that. I just won't. That's way out of my reach of understanding.
And for her to say that after the Intercontinental Hotel, like to say like she never had been that badly beaten, and we don't know. She says when they finally get to Sean's house, I just took off running. I started running down the street. But security catches up to her, brings her back to the house, and she looked in the mirror and she said, She didn't even recognize herself. Knots, bleeding, everything was swollen. She said, I just looked horrible. And then shortly after, Sean came in and he saw me. I think I was vomiting when he came in, and he kind of, like, that person was now gone and it switched over, like freaking out of sight. And he basically said I had to sneak out of the house, out of the back with the security, and go to a hotel and just stay there to recover.
Oh, that was the hiding in hotel incident.
Yeah.
Wow.
The government also brings up another exhibit which shows Cassie's eyebrow being completely, I mean, it's a pretty bad wound. The cut looks pretty deep with shades of pink. So it's like pinky flesh, like different shades of pink.
Wait, what do you mean? A picture of a close-up to
of her eyebrow. And there's like maybe,
Is this like a never seen before photo from?
Yes. Okay. This is like so oddly specific. You know, like the USB-C, the silver part. So not the actual like plug-in, just the metal part that you stick into your iPhone.
Yes.
It's like a little bigger than that. And there's like pink flesh, and it's like slightly different colors of pink. And then in the middle, it's almost like black. So it's a very deep wound. And it looks bad. And it's deep enough that she went to a plastic surgeon's office in Beverly Hills to suture it. And it's just evidence of one of the many violent fights that she had to endure during all of this. There were other times they were supposed to go to Canada. She was not packing. She had fallen asleep. And then he basically threw her and she hit her head on the bed frame. And when that picture is shown, Alex Fine, Cassie's husband, is looking and staring at the Combs family. And it's like, I think I would feel the same way of like, look at the picture. Like, look at what he did. Like, I would imagine it would be like, look at what he did. And I want to see if this is normal to you.
That guy is just boiling. He is bubbling like crazy.
Want to know their reaction of like, if you have no reaction, is it because this happens all the time? Is this what you guys are just used to? But what's crazy is that I looked over and it wasn't a member of the Combs family, but it was a friend of the Combs. And he's like asleep. I mean, like full, I'm talking like REM sleep.
Like head on the table type of sleep?
Yeah, he has like his elbow on the ledge of the pew and like his face is resting on his hand and his eyes are closed. And he was dozing off. And so I just imagine if Alex Fine is looking at that, I mean, yeah, I just imagine that's a lot of emotions. Cassie sends a picture of her eyebrow to Combs in a text message, which is also entered into the exhibit. He responds, "You don't know when to stop. You have pushed it too far and continue to push. Sad." Cassie responds, "Just say sorry. Have some sympathy. I came in saying sorry and I didn't even know I deserved that. You could care less if I was okay." She still has a permanent scar on her face from that and she covers it with makeup. How many times has Sean been violent with you before? Who knows? And clearly, security for all these people working for Combs, according to Cassie, they knew. She says D-Rock, one of the security guys, he cried once when he saw her with a giant golf ball-sized knot on her forehead and black eyes. Cassie says Sean Combs even held one of her friends off of her 17th floor balcony, just like held her over the balcony. She says she saw it and said, "I saw him bring her back over the railing of the balcony and then throw her onto the patio furniture." Even Carrie Morgan, who is Cassie's best friend of 17 years, they got into an altercation. Sean Combs allegedly hit Carrie Morgan on the head with a wooden hanger, and Carrie Morgan and Cassie had a falling out because of that. And so it's just like, Cassie's testifying that everything in her life is controlled by him. He would rent her homes near his home. They would barge in anytime she's not answering the phone. It was just everything. If he was upset with her, he would take away her car. He would take away her jewelry, her gifts, which she doesn't even care about. She said it was just very random, but the worst thing that he took away was, quote, my self-confidence.
Yeah, there you go.
Just physical things are physical things, but at that point to me, the physical things didn't really matter. I really just wanted his approval. She said, I mean, the greatest and most complicated and greatest examples are the abuse because, like, I also felt at certain times when I knew that it wasn't even about me. And yeah, like, make the wrong face, and the next thing I knew, I was getting hit in the face. It was like, you know, if I wasn't smiling at him the way he wanted, if I just looked a certain way that he didn't like, maybe I was a brat or something, like, he would let me know I need to fix my face or watch my mouth. That was like, those were the things that were said in our relationship quite often. Fix your face, watch your mouth, or you have a slick mouth. Now, there was another...
Just the expression of fix your face. Yeah, this is getting to me. I mean, we start off these videos always in a I mean, we're in the mood for this. We're getting serious and everything. But at the end of 2 hours, I'm always like, good God, how can people like this actually exist? You know, how can... It's just totally disgusting.
Exhibit that was entered in by the government, which is a text message between Sean Combs and Cassie, where he says he's just asking for another freak off. And Cassie responds, "That is all we do, and I'm just getting back on track. I'm sure you can call Kim or something."
Oh, Kim Porter?
Yeah, so that was a moment where I feel like there was a lot insinuated, but not a lot proven or explained.
Oh, they didn't dive more into it. She said, "I'm sure you can call Kim or something." And we don't know what Sean said. Okay.
Wow.
I mean, I think he just bypassed it. But like I'm saying, there was not a lot confirmed in the sense of like, okay, there were allegations by certain bodyguards and people that were speaking out to the media that were inside sources and close sources of the Combs family and team. And they had mentioned that perhaps Kim was also part, whether willing or unwilling, to these activities.
Yes,
So
that was heard quite often. We heard a lot of those things already. You never know, and she will never be able to testify anything of that. Because, wow, she had pneumonia. So many things don't add up. She had pneumonia. Brittany Murphy had pneumonia. Brittany Murphy's husband, half a year later, had died of something like that. Too many weird things and strange things going on in all of that.
This message was interesting. But eventually, August of 2018, the two finally do break up. Cassie just couldn't do it anymore, and they finally have a closure dinner in Malibu. Cassie was already seeing her husband at the time, Alex. They were no longer dating, her and Sean. This was just closure, and it was nice. She said he was just being really nice, playful, laughing, kind of romantic vibes, sort of. But we were just normal, laughing. It ended with him bringing me home, and yeah, that was it. We went inside, went in the living room. He came in, pretty usual, nothing weird, and then he raped me in my living room floor.
Oh, God.
How did you physically react when Combs raped you? I just remember crying and saying no, but it was very fast, so. What, if anything, did you observe about Sean's physical appearance? Just like black eyes. I kind of said that before, just wasn't himself. The laughing and like all the things that were happening before that was not there. And it was just like somebody taking something from you just without. You said that you cried. What did he do when you cried? He continued. I don't even know if he noticed, honestly. He continued, finished, and then he got up and left. After the R word in your living room, were you intimate with Sean again? I was, once more, but by choice. Can you explain to the jury why you agreed to see him again after the assault? We've been together for over 10 years. Like, you don't just turn feelings off that way. We were very connected at that point still. I still had good vision of who he was as a person. Like, I didn't hate him.
Wow. And you can just see how much her mind was already changed and twisted. That is crazy. He did a lot of harm. Not physically, psychologically, mentally. He did so much harm up there. Wow.
March 1st, 2019, so a few months afterwards, Combs texts Cassie, I'll pull up and handle it face-to-face, no threat, facts, and you will not be threatening me. You have too many iPads full of skeletons. If I was you, I would get me my money, because we both have better things to do with our lives. I really don't want no problems. I got it from here. I tried. Cassie is explaining that Sean wants his money back since the man that Cassie moves on with, her now husband, Alex Fine, was the personal trainer that Diddy had hired for her. So I guess he had paid her for sessions, and then they started having a relationship. So he didn't like that. He wanted the money.
What money?
Yeah.
I guess that he had paid Alex Fine for the personal training sessions. At this point, like, Combs, his glasses on, face all close to the evidence screen, intently reading. Cassie responds, do you want me to tell the truth? It's way deeper than iPads. This is her text message. They talk on and off here and there. but not much. But in 2023, Cassie talks about how she goes to rehab. She says, I was spinning out and I didn't want to be alive anymore at that point. So this is where she gets incredibly emotional. I was actually shooting a music video with another artist and I just kept having these horrible flashbacks. And after the video shoot, I went home and it was like super, super late and my kids were asleep. My husband was there and I just remember telling him, like, you can do this without me. Like, you don't need me here anymore, right? And like, while she's explaining this, Combs is just elbow on his chair, kind of touching his chin. Cassie takes a moment and then continues, I couldn't take the pain that I was in anymore, so I just tried to walk out the front door into oncoming traffic, and my husband would not let me. So she goes to rehab, and it's in rehab as a way of dealing with her trauma. She tries to write a book. Not like a book that she's trying to publish, but it's like a book format, like a journal. She just wanted to deliver it to Combs, and she did. She sent it to him. She said, I really wanted Sean to read the information. I wanted him to understand what I had to learn to understand over that period. Why did you want Sean to read the book? Because I don't think that he understood. I don't think after all those years of begging for like sorries and just for him to actually recognize the pain that he put me through, like I just wanted him to understand. I think bigger, more than anything, it was his own personal shame in I'm having to carry the things that were shameful to him.
Wow.
What were those things? The sexual part, the freak-offs, like I took on a lot of the responsibility of that I never should have. He brought the concept to me when I was 22 and I would do absolutely anything for him, and I did. And it never stopped our whole relationship, and it was expected of me, and it made me feel horrible about myself, and I couldn't get it out. I couldn't face him with it. I was always so numb because that's what I chose to do to get through it. Cassie tries to get Combs the book. Eventually, Combs' assistant, Christina Coram, I think that she's going to testify. I'm going to be so real. I think so. But she gets back to Cassie and is like, yeah, no one's really taking it seriously. I don't even know if he's going to read it. So the prosecutor asks, so other than wanting Sean to read your book, what else, if anything, did you want from Sean? I wanted to be compensated for the time, the pain, and like the many, many years of trying to have to fix my life. What, if any, price did you have for the rights of your book? 30 million. Can you explain to the jury how you came up with that figure? I really didn't do any research. I just picked a number that I felt like would alert him. November of 2023, Cassie files a lawsuit against Combs, and within 24 hours, she settles for $20 million. This was speculated but confirmed during her testimony. She has no more pending lawsuits actively against Combs or anyone else relating to her relationship with Combs, at least as of the day of testifying. However, in the next episode, a huge topic of conversation is that it appears that maybe a pending lawsuit had wrapped up within the past month. Without telling me about any discussions with your lawyers, why are you testifying at this trial? I can't carry this anymore. I can't carry the shame, the guilt, the way I was guided to treat people like they were disposable. What's right is right and what's wrong is wrong, and I'm here to do the right thing. And with that, we're going to head into part 2 of Cassie's cross-examination, part 2 of her testimony, where there were a lot of audible gasps at one point in the courtroom. There were a lot of intense moments, and I think that episode ties into, I guess, like the crazy polarization that's happening on the internet. It seems like every time I go on the internet, everybody is so divided. So stay tuned, and I will see you in the next one.
How on earth can people be divided here? I don't know. How could you think this way or that way? I don't understand. I am far from understanding that. To me, she's an absolutely courageous and brave woman to be sitting up there and testifying and going through all of that again, living through all of that, 8.5 months pregnant, the stress, the anguish, the excitement of being up there doing all of that. She could lose her, or her water could break right up there on that seat. But she's freeing herself. She is she is cutting all those shackles, all those chains. She's chopping them up. And that's good. That is really, really good. Wow. So the next one will be, once again, more about Cassie. Very nice. Very nice. I am looking forward to all of the other celebrity names that are going to pop up. I'm going to be, I don't know how many, there are so many other well-known hip-hop artists, rappers that might be involved. You never know. I have no idea who else is testifying, who else will be brought up. I don't know if it was known who's going to testify, or if that is kept secret. I don't really know to the public, We'll see. I'm very, very much following this now. And thanks to Stephanie Sue, she really does an absolutely great job. She is the one who goes into everything with the most depth, and I feel like Stephanie Sue she has a heart of gold, and you could feel that in the way she does all of this. And that's just amazing. Folks, this is already, this one was long enough now. Thank you all for sticking around. You guys are great. Please take care and stay safe out there. And as I always say, Sarange Anyong. Until the next time.